Chapter 617. Four pinnacle experts like Ling Xiaozue, Mr. Nian and Gu Chaoyang, the contents of their souls had long surpassed common sense. Even when their souls were shattered, as long as a shred of their remnant souls entered the cycle of reincarnation, there was a considerable chance for them to recapture the cultivation experience and state of mind of this lifetime. This was also the reason why Feng Xiang'e was shocked when Gu Chaoyang asked for the 3 lives and 3 lives tranquil wine. Drinking the 3 lives and 3 lives tranquil wine meant the destruction of one's soul. Now that Gu Chaoyang had offered to release Liang Canghai's soul into the cycle of reincarnation as long as Liang Canghai ended his own life, it could be said that he was giving Liang Canghai a way out. In spite of this, Liang Canghai did not answer. He countered in silence, continuing to resist Dugu Chao's sword energy attack. Dugu Chao said, "Why are you putting up such a futile struggle? If your partner could come, he would have done so long ago. Now that he's still in the future, he definitely won't be able to come." Facing Ling Xiaozue's all-out attack, unless he's willing to make a huge sacrifice. But will he pay such a price to save you? Gu Chaoyang continued, "Liang Canghai, you know yourself best. Are you still so sure that Mr. Nian will come back to save you? Forget it, I won't do anything anymore. Since you're a man, fight Dugu Chao alone. It's much more honorable for him to send you on your way than to be ganged up on and beaten to death." Listening to the mockery, Liang Canghai's counterattack did not diminish. Instead, it intensified. His throat could not help gurgling. He really wanted to spit on Gu Chaoyang's despicable old face and curse him with a finger pointed at his nose. King ambushed me the moment you came. First, you injured me, then the 3 of you ganged up on me, beating me until I was barely breathing, not much better than a dead man. Only then did you let me fight Dugu Chao alone? Gu Chaoyang was speechless. How can you be so shameless? In spite of this, he could not say it out loud. His vision was growing blurry as he felt himself falling deeper into an endless abyss. It was as if he would never reach the bottom. Dugu Chao glanced over as well and frowned. Why hadn't Ling Xiaozue let him go yet? Why didn't you follow the script? Did you really kill Mr. Nian? Right at this moment, a thunderclap resounded in midair, and it shook the heavens as a violet gold ray of light suddenly descended from the sky like a bolt of lightning. The momentum of this attack greatly exceeded the scope of everyone's imagination. "Go all out, kill Liang Canghai," Dugu Chao shouted. Gu Chaoyang, who had just said that he would no longer attack, attacked again without hesitation. He attacked with all his might as if he was going all out, afraid that he could not kill his target as soon as possible. Therefore, countless light curtains filled with boundless killing intent smashed down on Liang Canghai, who was already on the verge of collapse. However, a long roar shook the heavens in midair, and a figure rushed over under the shroud of saber lights, sword shadows, fists and palms. Dang dang dang. It was Dugu Chao's sword that made a series of clangs as it seemed to have encountered some kind of weapon. Dugu Chao had to inject mystical qi into the sword again to stop himself from being flung away. Gu Chaoyang was in an even worse state. With a grunt, he somersaulted away. It was obvious that he had been sent flying by the person who had rashly intervened in the battle. Feng Xiang'e, who was slightly further away, opened his eyes abruptly. What he saw was a black-clothed, blood-stained silhouette landing abruptly. Then, with a twirl of one hand, countless rays of light shot out in all directions at once. Then, there was another loud explosion. Black fog spread with the explosion, shrouding 1,000 feet of land in an instant. It connected heaven and earth, blotting out the sun and the sky. A chilling voice spoke, "I will never forget everyone's kindness. There shall be reincarnation in this lifetime." Before the voice could echo in the air, a black shadow that was darker than the black fog soared into the sky, leaving the battle. Trying to leave? It won't be that easy. Not only did Dugu Chao soar with his sword, Gu Chaoyang was also waving his purple jade flute, turning into a ray of purple light as he pursued. Even Feng Xiang'e, who was resting on the side, attacked with all his might. Countless saber lights flashed and charged into the black fog. A low grunt came from the black fog as if the person inside had been injured from the series of attacks. In spite of it, Gu Chaoyang and the other 2 had suffered a considerable counterattack as well. Gu Chaoyang was the first to spit a mouthful of blood and staggered hundreds of feet back. Dugu Chao grunted, his body swaying, but his sword did not strike again. As for Feng Xiang'e, he rolled away like a gourd due to the attack, looking extremely wretched. Just as the 3 of them were pushed back, the black silhouette in the thick fog soared up again. However, blood was still spurting from all over his body as he soared into the air and charged out of the thick fog. There was a person under his ribs. Who else could it be but Liang Canghai? The bleeding silhouette twisted in the air, and with another deafening howl, he surged into the distance like a raging dragon, vanishing in the blink of an eye. Dugucho and the rest wanted to give chase, but it was already too late. It was then that Ling Xiaozui's voice came from midair. "Where do you think you're going? Stay." A dazzling sword light that was like the sun appeared in the sky, illuminating hundreds of miles of mountains and rivers. A low grunt came from the other end before it was completely silent. A voice that was filled with resentment came from afar. "Good, good, very good. I'll remember what happened today." Ling Xiaozui descended slowly from the sky. Feng Xiang'e was lying on the ground, Gu Chaoyang was leaning against a broken tree trunk, and Dugucho was looking up. The 8 eyes of the 4 men exchanged glances, a smile playing at the corners of their lips. "If you didn't let him come over, we might have to kill Liang Canghai." Gu Chaoyang stood up shakily. Ling Xiaozui coughed and said, "This can't be helped. With Mr. Nian's cautiousness, he'll be suspicious if we let him go too easily. Therefore, I've only made him spit blood from his heart twice. This price shouldn't have reached his limit." Dugucho sighed and said, "Old Gu's words were indeed exaggerated. Even if Mr. Nian had come a little later, I think Liang Canghai would still have been able to hold on. An expert of this level won't collapse so easily. With the 3 of us working together, victory is assured and we have the upper hand. However, the other party is preserving his life at all costs, not hesitating to unleash the potential of his life force soul just to stay alive. His will to live is unshakable. Old Gu's psychological tactic of letting his soul reincarnate is completely ineffective. It's just a waste of breath." Dugucho said, "Therefore, perhaps Liang Canghai would really be killed by us if we were a little later, but not now." Ling Xiaozui nodded. It was basically the same as what he had guessed. Just like what Dugucho had said, this was also the key to why the top experts in this world were harder to kill. Even if 3 experts of the same level were to besiege one person, the most they could do was gain the upper hand and victory was assured. However, to actually kill him was an entirely different matter. When it came to the brink of death, most people who were besieged would choose to unleash all of their potential to save their lives. Even if such potential and the source of life could not be replenished for many years or even a lifetime, they would not hesitate to do so. Only by staying alive could they talk about the future. What was in front of them was the key. On the contrary, the few people who had the upper hand would never adopt such a method. Their combined ability was far superior to the other party. Even if the other party were to put up a desperate resistance, they could still defeat the other party if they were to endure it. There was really no need to fight the other party head-on and cause both sides to suffer or even die. Therefore, under such a contrast, as long as the enemy fought with all his might, there was a high chance that he could escape. Take today's situation as an example. If Feng Xiang'e had retreated at the last minute, the so-called sure-kill situation would be a joke. What happens next depends on Brother Feng. Ling Xiaozui and the other 2 turned to look at Feng Xiang'e simultaneously. There were too many haters. The death of a family member could also be a reason for them to vent their anger. They said that they were making up excuses to ask for leave. I could only smirk coldly. When I, Feng Lingtian, want to ask for leave, I never need a reason. What more to curse my own family? Chapter 6:18. Feng Xiang'e chuckled humorlessly and stood up shakily. His eyes were rolling back in his head as he said exasperatedly, "If the other party's ability was a notch higher, you'll have to go underground if you want to see me." Fear lingered in his heart. That was so close just now. I feel like my life is already at the gates of the King of Hell, and I've only gone for a spin inside. Dugucho and the other 2 chuckled, knowing how perilous Feng Xiang'e had been just now. Hurrying forward to curry favor, Gu Chaoyang took out a medicinal pill while Ling Xiaozui and Dugucho extended their hands in unison to help Feng Xiang'e heal. After a while, Feng Xiang'e caught his breath and said, all right. That's enough." As he spoke, he struggled to retrieve a strange bamboo tube that was entirely white in color from his embrace. Once the lid was opened, a small snow-white snake slithered out and coiled itself around Feng Xiang'e's hand intimately. The trio was shocked to realize that the snake had been snow-white when it crawled out, but when it came to Feng Xiang'e's hand, it turned into the same color as Feng Xiang'e's hand. If they had seen it earlier, the trio might not have been able to tell that there was a snake on Feng Xiang'e's hand. Feng Xiang'e fed the snake a tiny, white pill and placed it beside the blood stain that Liang Canghai had spat out. The moment the little snake landed on the ground, the color of its body changed once again. In an instant, it became the same color as the ground. When it slowly crawled over and smelled the blood, its body returned to its snow-white color once again. It licked the blood. Then a red line seeped into the snake's snow-white body. Then the snake lifted its head and turned slowly, faster and faster. Finally, it headed towards the direction where Mr. Nian and Dugucho had left. "Go," Feng Xianga said softly. The small snake slowly crawled in a circle and suddenly jumped up. Then it abruptly disappeared. There was no trace of him at all. The speed of its movement dumbfounded the three experts other than Feng Xianga, their eyes filled with disbelief. "Is it done?" "It's done." Feng Xianga was unperturbed. "My Xiaobai has never failed in tracking in its life." The battle of the century outside Tiantang City was earth-shattering, but no one knew about it other than the 6 people involved. The commotion caused by such a great battle was not small, and the location of the battle was not too far away from Tiantang City. Skilled cultivators should have noticed it. However, there was a great battle taking place in Tiantang City as well, and it had not stopped even when dawn broke. As the only person who should have participated in the battle of the century but did not, Yunyang had witnessed the entire battle in Tiantang City. It was hard to say who would emerge victorious in this battle. The Four Seasons Tower's experts were almost all dead or injured, while the assassins had suffered even more casualties. There was a thick layer of corpses on the ground. In the end, the 2 legendary assassins, Hen Bieli and Hong Zhan, led the experts under their command and finally forced out all of the Four Seasons Tower's forces. The war then entered the most extreme stage. Frost, Snow, and Sword, along with the Four Seasons Tower's 9 Dao Realm experts, charged out like ferocious tigers. Hong Zhan and Hen Bieli felt immense pressure and headache at the same time. Based on individual cultivation base alone, the 2 of them, along with the 4 assistants from the Merciless Tower and Hall of Crimson Blade, could easily suppress any one of the Four Seasons Tower's 12 people. The assassins were not at a disadvantage when it came to the combination of their superior combat power. In spite of this, the actual battle could not be calculated in such a manner. The Four Seasons Tower's 12 superior cultivators were the main force of attack. They did not focus on a single point but launched a one-on-one attack. The 6 experts on the assassin's side were caught in a difficult situation. Both sides were well aware of each other's capabilities. When the Four Seasons Tower launched their final attack, 6 of the experts charged straight at Hen Bieli and the others. They did not seek to win, only to entangle the assassins and drag the battle on, leaving them with no time to spare. Snow, Frost, and Sword, as well as the other 3 men, charged into the group of assassins and began a massacre. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere as blood flowed like a river. With the cultivation base and capability of these 6 people, it was like a tiger entering a flock of sheep, facing an assassin whose ability was at least a realm lower than theirs. How could Hen Bieli not know what the other party was thinking? However, it was difficult to break out of this predicament in a hurry. Driven by his hatred, he let out a long howl and bellowed in rage, "Concourse of the Underworld! Are you all here just to watch the show this time?" Initially, he had expected that once he spoke, he would be admitting defeat to the Concourse of the Underworld and would even owe them a huge favor. In addition, the Concourse of the Underworld had a deep grudge with the Four Seasons Tower, so it was only right for them to lend a helping hand. There was only a sliver of difference between victory and defeat. As long as a few of the Concourse of the Underworld's 10 court Yama Kings made a move and slightly restrained Sword, Frost, Snow, and the others, while the 6 of them killed their opponents as quickly as possible, they could wipe out all of the Four Seasons Tower's men while avoiding a large number of casualties on their side. This was a method that was beneficial to both parties and themselves. The Concourse of the Underworld who had joined the battle could not have missed the crux of the matter. There was no reason for them not to do the same, especially now that they were the ones who had asked for help. In spite of this, not only did he not receive any response, the ghastly fog that had been shrouding the sky had vanished swiftly after a while. It had vanished. Countless assassins had even forgotten to fight, their mouths agape in shock. What kind of miracle was this? Hen Bieli and Hong Zhan could only feel a chill in their hearts as they witnessed the turn of events. The rage of being deceived and betrayed rose like a raging fire. The Concourse of the Underworld had come, but they had stood them up at this delicate juncture. It turned out that they had never intended to make a move. They were only here to watch the show, to watch the fight from the sidelines and reap the rewards. Realizing this, both of them were so enraged that they almost exploded on the spot. As the new generation of legends in the world of assassins, when had they ever been toyed with so miserably in their lives? Amidst their agitation, the Four Seasons Tower's experts had seized the opportunity to pry into their flaws, putting them in a perilous situation. Both of them were experts of this world after all. They quickly composed themselves and steadied their footing. Their cultivation base was more than a level higher than their opponents. Otherwise, the instant of agitation just now would have turned the tables. Now that they had calmed down, they swiftly regained the upper hand. Their opponents were vigilant as well, changing their battle tactics back to their previous strategy of dragging the fight out. They would not fight the two of them head-on. Henbieli's thoughts raced as he came to a sudden realization. The concourse of the underworld's refusal to join the battle was in their best interest. The concourse of the underworld had been dealt a heavy blow by the Four Seasons Tower previously, leaving less than a tenth of its original strength. It was already on the decline. The title of the top assassin organization was no longer true. On the other hand, the Merciless Tower was the second largest assassin organization after the concourse of the underworld. This time they had issued the ultimate token of the assassin world, the dictum of death. If they achieved a great victory in this ambush against the Four Seasons Tower, not only would the ranking of the assassin organizations be rewritten, it would also be a question whether the concourse of the underworld could still be ranked among the top assassin organizations. Chapter 619. Currently, the Four Seasons Tower strategy was working. The assassins had suffered heavy losses, and the number of casualties was still increasing. Although such a situation would not affect the final outcome of the battle, because the final outcome would be the assassin's victory, the concourse of the underworld would be happy to see such a situation. If too many of the assassins who had come for the battle perished, the Merciless Tower and the Hall of Crimson Blade would no longer be credible. The dream of being the leader of the assassin's world would only be a dream. Even if the Four Seasons Tower's experts were wiped out in the end, the Hall of Crimson Blade and the Merciless Tower would have to pay a considerable price. This was not even taking into account the Four Seasons Tower's subsequent revenge. Therefore, it was reasonable for the concourse of the underworld to retreat at the last minute. It was within their expectations, within reason. Thinking of this, Henbieli's hatred lessened. He quickly came to a conclusion. They had to eliminate the Four Seasons Tower's experts as soon as possible. In other words, they had to use their hidden trump card. If they were to delay any longer, they would lose everything tonight. Henbieli howled. With a flick of his wrist, a blood-red firework rose abruptly. However, as the blood-red firework was unleashed, Henbieli and Hongzhan's hearts were bleeding. This force was the last force they had hidden in the Merciless Tower and the Hall of Crimson Blade. It also included some high-level assassins they had recruited recently. It was truly their last trump card. Initially, Henbieli and Hongzhan had predicted that they would far surpass the Four Seasons Tower in terms of manpower and overall capability. With the help of a veteran like the concourse of the underworld, this trump card was only a contingency plan, the so-called killer's last resort. However, not only did the Four Seasons Tower's combat power exceed their expectations, their strategy was even more ingenious and targeted, causing the assassins' losses to far exceed their expectations. Furthermore, the concourse of the underworld had withdrawn at the last minute. The situation was dire. If they were to delay any longer, the assassins who had come for the battle might collapse first. Therefore, the only thing they could do now was to fill in the gaps and end the battle as soon as possible. However, once they thought of the losses they had incurred in this battle, the two leaders felt an unbearable pain in their hearts. Following the command, countless glints of saber light and sword shadows of various colors suddenly engulfed the night sky. Countless gray-clothed assassins appeared one after another. However, these figures that suddenly appeared were extremely strange and illusory. Following a series of explosions, smoke and dust filled the sky, and all of them disappeared into the night fog that suddenly rose. However, the killing intent that permeated the air instantly became many times stronger. From then on, the Four Seasons Tower's experts began to suffer casualties. Although the number of people summoned by the two major assassin organizations this time was not many, the quality was shockingly high. In terms of pure martial strength, almost every one of them had the tyrannical strength to establish their own sects in the outside world. Once these people intervened, the Four Seasons Tower's final strength that they relied on as a great wall was immediately suppressed. Moments later, casualties began to appear. Henbieli did not hold back either. Clad in green and wielding his sword, his body spun like the wind, sometimes to the east and sometimes to the west. His eyes glinted brilliantly as he launched an all-out attack on the Four Seasons Tower's remaining forces. Hongzhan naturally did not want to be outdone. The two of them, one on the left and one on the right, one on the south and one on the north, complemented each other and began a massacre. Yun Yang, who was observing from the shadows, could not help frowning when he saw the scene. Based on the current situation, the Four Seasons Tower's defeat was set in stone. Snow, frost, and sword did not even have the chance to break out of the siege. If the stalemate continued, both sides' abilities would be completely unbalanced, and the three of them would definitely lose their lives in this battle. In fact, the three of them were already in dire straits. Venerable Lord Snow's white robe was already stained with blood, while Venerable Lord Sword had a piece of his scalp shaved off. Only Venerable Lord Frost was still alive. Yun Yang lifted his head and looked at the wraith fog not far away before he retracted his gaze. Then a few more cries rang out. Another 5 Four Seasons Towers experts had died a violent death. The assassins had only paid the price in this round of attacks. Only 3 of them were severely injured. A moment later, another series of cries rang out. Hen Bieli and Hong Zhan had attacked aggressively, one from the south and one from the north, killing the other 4 experts from the Four Seasons Tower, other than the 3 venerable lords. Now the Four Seasons Tower was left with only Snow, Frost, and Sword. At this point, more than 100 assassins had revealed themselves. Countless cold gazes were focused on the 3 men who were on the verge of collapsing in the field. The battle had finally come to an end. However, in this battle, there were already more than 1,500 famous assassins who fell here forever. It was undoubtedly a huge number. However, this huge number of casualties was only exchanged for the lives of less than 200 men from the Four Seasons Tower. On the side of the assassins, although they had won this battle, they had actually lost. The gains did not make up for the losses. With a wave of his hand, Hen Bieli halted his attacks. His hawk-like eyes stared at Venerable Lord Snow and said, "Venerable Lord Snow, now that this battle has come to an end, this reputed one still has something that I don't understand. If I don't get to the bottom of this, I'll feel indignant. I wonder if Venerable Lord Snow can answer this reputed one at this last juncture?" Venerable Lord Snow coughed and chuckled bitterly. "A question that I don't understand? Indignant? That's great. Initially, I hated myself for not being able to kill you, and I couldn't help but die with a grudge. However, if I were to bury your puzzlement and let you be paranoid for the rest of your life, it would be a wonderful thing to do." Venerable Lord Sword and Venerable Lord Frost guffawed at the same time, not at all concerned about the current situation. Hen Bieli's gaze grew colder and colder, sharper and sharper. He said faintly, "It looks like the 3 venerable lords don't wish to answer?" Venerable Lord Sword spat and lifted his neck, replying in disdain, "Answer you? Who do you think you are?" Hen Bieli nodded slowly, his murderous intent blazing as he uttered word by word, "Good, very good." With a wave of his hand he commanded, "Kill." All the assassins moved at the same time. Boundless murderous intent engulfed the 3 venerable lords. It was at this moment that a piercing howl was heard. A deep voice spoke, "Over here." At the same time, a blinding light erupted in the yard, as if a sun had fallen into the yard. Assassins were more accustomed to the dark atmosphere, for it was the only way they could feel more secure. Now that they were exposed to such a strong light, they were blinded. Their vigilance was heightened as they shut their eyes instinctively, brandishing their weapons so that the wind and rain could not penetrate them. Their priority was to protect themselves. Snow, Frost, and Sword, Venerable Lord Frost and Venerable Lord Sword were quick to react to the sudden change, charging out. Amidst the darkness, a vague silhouette appeared high in the sky. Its arms were raised and the sound of wind breaking was incessant. Then it was as if countless experts had attacked at the same time. Countless hidden weapons formed an impenetrable wall behind Snow, Frost, and Sword like a storm. Don't let the Four Seasons Tower's remnant escape. Hen Bieli was a veteran, so he was the quickest to react. He knew that if the 3 venerable lords were to escape unscathed, there would only be endless trouble. With a loud roar he was about to give chase. Unexpectedly, an eerie laugh rang in the air. "Who's the remnant?" Before the voice could echo in the air, an exceedingly domineering force struck. Hen Bieli's eyes were still tearing up. He was only exerting himself to give chase. Amidst the sudden attack, he instinctively swung his sword in the direction of the sound of the wind. A crisp sound rang out. He didn't know what his sword had hit, but he saw thick smoke rising into the air. After the bright light, thick smoke engulfed the area. It was so dark that one could not even see their own fingers. When the smoke dissipated and the assassins looked over, all they could see was the galaxy, the moon in the sky, and the blood and broken limbs on the ground. The 3 venerable lords of the Four Seasons Tower were nowhere to be seen. They didn't even know who had saved them. "I'm so angry today. A close friend of mine came to our house. Before she came I told her, 'Don't embarrass me later, don't speak so harshly.' I'll remember it. My close friend is here. She's elegant and pretty. I've only taken a few more glances, been a little more attentive, and complimented her a little. Everything was done according to my wife's instructions. My wife was all smiles then, but after my close friend left, I was beaten up. I even have to sleep on the sofa tonight. I'm so angry. Chapter 6:20. They had mobilized so many men and paid such a heavy price, yet they had failed to capture the three most important people of the enemy. This battle could not even be considered a Pyrrhic victory. Hen Bieli seethed with anger. Search. Even if we have to dig 3 feet into the ground, we must find these 3 people. Venerable Lord Sword and the other 2 men who had escaped from the death ordeal were rather dumbfounded, feeling lost. Their current objective was simple and brutal. Firstly, it was to avenge their brothers, and secondly, it was because they hated the Four Seasons Tower for using them to cultivate God's bones but not treating them as human beings. However, the 3 of them had never expected that they could actually cause such a great calamity in the martial world. While they had tried their best to gather the Four Seasons Tower's forces in Tiantang City without reservation, they would never have thought that the guards who had always followed their bosses would be willing to listen to their orders and participate in this battle. However, knowing the difference in the overall strength of the 2 sides, although they had arranged many preparations and their tactics and strategies were very effective, the outcome of this battle had long been decided. The 3 of them did not even think that they would be able to survive in the end. They only thought about killing as many as they could, and killing as much of their opponents as possible. As long as they completed their strategy, they would have avenged their brothers. While they had lost the Four Seasons Tower's manpower, they had also caused trouble for the Four Seasons Tower. Even if they were to die in this catastrophe, they could still smile in the underworld. However, what the 3 of them did not expect was that the Four Seasons Tower's men they had recruited were all dead. The 2 top assassin organizations themselves and the assassins they had recruited suffered heavy losses, and the 3 of them had managed to escape at the last moment when they were at their wits' end. In the face of this result, the 3 of them felt as if they were in a dream. They could not believe this reality. In a hidden place, the 3 men who had yet to recover from their shock looked at each other. Who saved us? Venerable Lord Sword was rather puzzled. Could we have a backup plan in Tiantang City? Why didn't I know about this? The other 2 men were perplexed as well. Venerable Lord Sword's question was similar to theirs. It was just that Venerable Lord Sword had asked it first. That's right, who saved us? Even if the Four Seasons Tower had a backup plan, it was impossible to believe that they had saved them. The door opened. A purple-robed young master in a light coat walked in slowly with a smile on his face and an elegant demeanor. Greetings, Venerable Ones. Young Master Yun? It's you? The 3 Venerable Ones were shocked when they saw the person in front of them. They were confused and asked, "Why are you here?" These 3 men had always been entangled with Yun Yang. From the fated encounter of Venerable Lord Sword in the latter half of his life, to their reunion at the Fortress of Resilience, and even the recent provocation, it had all changed the trajectory of their destinies bit by bit. When it came to the former, Yun Yang had abided by the rules of the martial world and brought Venerable Lord Ice's last words to them. The trio already felt that they owed him a huge favor, so their fondness for each other skyrocketed. However, he had not expected Yun Yang to save the 3 of them in such a perilous situation when the 3 of them were facing all the assassins in the world. This debt of gratitude was a little too great. He had yet to repay the previous debt, and now he owed him a life-saving debt. He really didn't know how to deal with it. Why can't it be me? Truth be told, who else in Tiantang City has such capability other than me? Yun Yang smiled faintly. The 3 of them sat down in bewilderment, not knowing what to say. Venerable Lord Frost pondered for a moment before he finally broke the silence. The truth is right before our eyes. Of course, we won't doubt young Master's ability anymore, but I wonder why young Master Yun would do this? Venerable Lord Snow and Venerable Lord Sword perked up. This was a good question. There must be a reason for you to save us. There really isn't a reason. Yun Yang smiled. Don't worry, the 3 of you. Yun Yang will never use this favor to make the 3 Venerable Lords work for him. Yun Yang still has this basic morality. This was what the 3 of them were most worried about. After all, they owed Yun Yang so many favors. If he really wanted them to work for him, they would not be able to answer. It was certain that the 3 of them were unwilling, but if they were to reject him directly, it would sound bad and they would not be able to get past it. They owed too much. Hearing Yun Yang's words, the 3 of them could not help heaving a sigh of relief. Then, Venerable Lord Frost felt a weight lifted off his shoulders, but he was even more confused. There aren't so many whys. Yun Yang paused before he continued. When I first got to know the 3 Venerable Lords, there were many misunderstandings that caused us to stand on opposite sides. Even now, the animosity still exists. But think about it, where is the initial focus of our conflict? It's not hard to figure out why I would be kind to the three venerable lords. What the three venerable lords have done for your brothers, in my opinion, is truly touching. Such brotherhood is what I've been pursuing and even trying my best to achieve. He sighed softly and said emotionally, I have brothers as well. I can also disregard everything for my brothers. The three of them could deeply feel the deep emotions contained in Yun Yang's words. They were words that came from the bottom of his heart, without a hint of falsehood. Recalling the filthy incident with Yun Yang that day, the root cause was indeed Yun Yang risking his life to save Lei Dongtian. It was truly highlighting the importance he placed on brotherhood. It was because they shared the same sentiments and shared the same logic. How could they not feel touched and empathize with him? People who can disregard everything for their brothers, I don't think they should just die like this. Yun Yang said honestly, therefore even if it's only for this, I have a reason to act. Saving the three of you can save Venerable Lord Ice from grieving for his brothers in the netherworld. It can also preserve a tale of brotherhood in this world. Every word he said came from the bottom of his heart, sincere and sincere. The three of them were even more moved. With Venerable Lord Snow taking the lead, the three of them bowed at the same time. Thank you for young Master Yun's generosity. Venerable Lord Sword was the most hot-tempered among the three of them, but he was also the most outspoken. He said, when young Master Yun talked about brothers just now, I have something that I have to say. Yun Yang said, please speak, Venerable Lord Sword. Venerable Lord Sword said, I know that the brother young Master Yun mentioned is Lei Dongtian. Forgive me for being straightforward, but Lei Dongtian and young Master Yun's behavior are like heaven and earth. How can they be mentioned in the same breath? I dare say that this person has ill intentions towards young Master Yun. Young Master Yun must be cautious. Chapter 621. Venerable Lord Frost and Venerable Lord Snow kept signaling him with their eyes, but Venerable Lord Sword continued to speak without a care in the world. In the end he said, I know that young Master Yun will not be pleased to hear these words. Coming from someone like me who has a grudge against him, I suspect that I am trying to sow discord, but I have to say it anyway. Please forgive me, young Master Yun. Yun Yang was silent for a long time. After a while he finally nodded lightly and said, I understand the Venerable One's good intentions, but the first thing that people pay attention to when they interact with each other is fate at first sight. Everything that has happened in the past is even more indescribable. Let's take 10,000 steps back. Who doesn't have a little bit of selfishness in life? Who can guarantee that they don't have a little bit of their own little schemes and motives? In the future. He nodded with difficulty and said, I will be careful. I will do my best to be prepared. That would be for the best. Young Master is magnanimous and readily accepts good advice. We are impressed. The three of them smiled at the same time. Now that you've gotten your revenge, what are your plans for the future? Yin Yang asked. Venerable Lord Sword said hatefully, Hong Zhan isn't dead yet. How can this vengeance be considered avenged? Yin Yang chuckled. Going too far is as bad as falling short. I think it's enough. Also, the three Venerable Lords should think that it's about time. Venerable Lord Snow asked, What do you mean, young Master Yun? Yun Yang said seriously, It's understandable that the three of you are seeking revenge for Venerable Lord Ice, but more than 10,000 people have died here in Tiantang City ever since the three of you have laid out your vengeance for revenge. I really think that the three of you can stop now. Even if the three of you still have some unwillingness in your hearts, and still feel that you haven't completely fulfilled your wish, no matter what, you've already accomplished more than half of it. Stopping now is also a brave retreat. If we continue to be entangled here, there will only be one result, and that is, the three of you will die here as well. Next time, I believe there won't be any flukes. Yun Yang spoke with sincerity, If the three of you are willing to listen to my humble opinion, why don't you retire from the martial world? Isn't this another way to fulfill your brother's wish and achieve the goal you've always wanted to achieve? Hearing Yun Yang's words, the trio could not help chuckling bitterly. Retire from the martial world? Of course we want to leave the martial world and live a peaceful life, but how would you know how terrifying the Four Seasons Tower is? How can we retreat? Today's luck ends today. After today, other than facing the pursuit of the Merciless Tower and the Hall of Crimson Blade, we still have to wait for the Four Seasons Tower's pursuit. Retreat? I can't retreat. Venerable Lord Snow's gaze towards Yun Yang was filled with warmth and gentleness. It was the same for Venerable Lord Sword and Venerable Lord Frost. The other party saved them and did not ask for anything from them. Instead, he advised the three of them to retire and live the rest of their lives in peace. Everything that had happened before them proved that Yun Yang did not harbor any malicious intent towards the three of them. He only treated them with sincerity and kindness. Furthermore, Yun Yang's words were spoken from the bottom of his heart. Every word he said was for the sake of the three of them. The three of them were veterans in the martial world, how could they not hear it? Ever since they got to know Yun Yang, they had been at odds with each other since the beginning. Then they had come to a mutual compromise. Then they admired each other and even owed each other a favor. Now they had completely acknowledged each other. It was truly a long and tortuous process. Before this, the three venerable lords would never have dreamed that they would experience so many psychological changes towards a young man and change their opinions so many times. There are only unimaginable solutions in this world and unachievable things. If the three of you really intend to retire, it's not like there's no way. Yun Yang said seriously, let's just talk about the simplest method. In Tiantang City, I'm confident that I can find three fellows who have committed the most heinous crimes and disguise them as the three of you before killing them. We can even let the Merciless Tower and the Hall of Crimson Blade do it. As long as it's set up properly, this substitution plan can guarantee our safety. Not only can the three of you leave in peace, there won't be any trouble in the future as long as you're careful. I believe there won't be any accidents even if you want to. No matter how powerful the Four Seasons Tower is, it'll still have its limits. With the three of you's understanding of the Four Seasons Tower, you should be quite confident in seeking fortune and avoiding calamity. Yun Yang smiled. Sigh, young Master Yun's plan is thoughtful, but it's a pity that it's impossible for it to work on us. Venerable Lord Snow was a little disappointed. Thank you, young Master Yun, for your kindness. However, it's not that the three of us don't want to retire from the martial world and live peacefully. There's something fishy about us. No matter where we go, as long as we're still on this continent, we're destined to have nowhere to live. The Four Seasons Tower can find us anytime. Ah? Yin Yang was doubtful. What's so powerful about it? The three of them sighed dejectedly. Even so, the Four Seasons Tower's forces in Tiantang City are basically all gone. Even if they still have some strength left, they won't be a threat to you in the short term. Yun Yang said. Young Master Yun knows too little about the Four Seasons Tower. The combat power that the Four Seasons Tower has displayed this time is only the tip of the iceberg. It's hardly worthy of praise. In fact, there should be two more people around Tiantang City. The three of them chuckled bitterly. One of them is a scholar while the other is a warrior. They're the real troublesome characters. When they came, they only left after understanding the situation. They didn't participate in the planning of the incident. Otherwise, our plan wouldn't have gone so smoothly. Yes, these two are the Four Seasons Tower's true helmsmen in Yutong. Venerable Lord Snow sighed softly and said word by word, they're unfathomable. If we were to back out, we wouldn't be able to hide it from these two people no matter what. A cold glint flashed in Yun Yang's eyes as he said, one of them is a scholar while the other is a warrior, unfathomable? Is it because of these two that the three of you can't go into seclusion? Do they have some kind of unique method to locate the three of you? Venerable Lord Sword chuckled bitterly. That's not exactly the case, but it's a fact that these two people are very useful. As long as these two people are dealt with, the three of you can go into seclusion in peace? If so, I'll help you deal with these two people. The three venerable lords chuckled bitterly at the same time. Young Master Yun, we probably didn't make things clear just now. The evaluation of a scholar and a warrior just now was only based on the direction of their actions. In terms of a cultivator's evaluation method, both of them are the pinnacle experts of this world, and at the same time they're peerless sages. If they could be dealt with so easily, wouldn't we have done so long ago? Venerable Lord Snow chuckled bitterly. I'll only say one thing. I believe young Master Yun should have some understanding of these two people's abilities. Back when the Nine Heavens domain descended on Yutong, it was these two people who sneaked into Tiantang City, plotting and setting up a mission that the Nine Supremes had to go for. Then they set up the omnipresent void formation to capture all of Yutong's Nine Supremes? That's not all. After they had planned everything, they didn't intervene further. Instead, they retreated immediately, making it seem as if this matter had nothing to do with the both of them. In fact, the series of plans against the Nine Supremes, every link and every step, were carried out strictly according to the set direction they had set. They were executed meticulously. The truth has also proven that every link and step in the process has been calculated by them. Such intelligence, no matter how much they think highly of themselves and are unwilling to belittle themselves, it's still something we dare not even think about. Venerable Lord Snow said, Furthermore, although these two people have their own faces, it seems that one is a cultivation expert while the other is a powerless strategist. However, we all know that this is not the case. These two people are the pinnacle experts of this world who have reached the state of returning to their natural state. Even if the three of us, or even the 5 venerable lords of the past, were to join forces and besiege them, it would be difficult to shake either one of them. Isn't such a character terrifying? And, I've been fishing for the whole day today. Sorry for the late update. But fishing was great. I caught 3 wild carps that weighed 17 to 18 caddies and 16 wild crucian carps that weighed more than a caddy. It was great. Chapter 6:22. Yun Yang snorted, a murderous glint in his eyes as he said, "So this is the truth behind the 9 Supremes' mishap. All the more reason why these two people can't be left alive. The 9 Supremes Lords are the Empire of Yutong's great heroes. They're our greatest enemies for harming our heroes. They must pay the price for this. We, the people of Yutong, have always regretted not being able to avenge the 9 Supremes Lords. Now that we have such an important clue, we must bring these two to justice no matter what. We must cut them into pieces, dismember them, and grind their bones into ashes. I was only willing to help the 3 of you because we were like-minded. Now that we have a common enemy, we should work together and help each other." The 3 venerable lords could not help rolling their eyes when they heard Yun Yang's words. "Do you think it's so easy? Bring them to justice?" They were speechless. Which of these two people was easy to bring to justice? Yun Yang stood up and bowed deeply. "I hope the 3 venerable lords can help me a little. Tell me the identities of these 2 people and their hiding places. I must eliminate these 2 people, these 2 common enemies, with all I have. Young Master Yun, these 2 people are too capable." Venerable Lord Snow said, "It's not that we don't want to tell you. In fact, we wish for these 2 people to die faster than anyone else. However, if we tell you, it'll be sending you to your death. Young Master is a young man with a bright future ahead of you. Why do you have to be impulsive and provoke an invincible enemy?" Yun Yang pondered for a moment and said in a low voice, "It looks like if I don't give the 3 of you some confidence, it'll be hard for the 3 of you to have the will to fight. I won't keep you in suspense anymore. There's something that the 3 of you might know, but you might not be very clear about it." He lowered his voice. The 3 of them felt nervous at the same time and could not help asking, "What is it?" "I believe the 3 of you know that Ling Xiaozui and Duguchou are in Tiantang City now." Yun Yang said in a low voice, "However, the 3 of you probably don't know that these 2 people are staying together. Although it's only the first time they've met each other, they're like old friends." The trio's eyes shone when they heard him. "If these 2 people were to help us in battle, it would be a different story." But then he sighed and said, "But how can these 2 people be so easily mobilized?" Yun Yang flashed a mysterious smile. "There's always a way out. I believe the 3 of you know that. Big brother Ling Xiaozui has a grudge with the 4 Seasons Tower and owes me a huge favor. If I were to ask him to act and the target is someone from the 4 Seasons Tower, I believe the chances are pretty high." The 3 venerable lords sucked in a cold breath in unison, looking at Yun Yang like they had seen a ghost. "Really? Is young Master Yun speaking the truth?" "It's 100% true." Yun Yang promised seriously. "Just last night, Brother Ling and the rest came to my house for a drink and formally introduced Senior Dugu to me." As soon as he said that, the 3 of them felt a wave of dizziness. It took them a while to regain their composure. They looked at each other and saw the look in each other's eyes. This was feasible. It was definitely feasible. Thinking of this, the 3 of them who had reached a consensus immediately became spirited. If they could live, why would they want to die? What was more, there was still hope for revenge. It was a great opportunity to annihilate their enemy. How could they let it go? Venerable Lord Snow sucked in a deep breath. "If young Master has such a strong support, the situation will be different. I can tell young Master about those 2 people. However, young Master, you still have to be cautious. If Ling Xiaozui isn't willing to act, then you must not act recklessly. Where there's life, there's hope. Don't worry, don't worry. I treasure my life very much as well." Yun Yang said. The 4 of them exchanged smiles. Venerable Lord Snow lowered his voice to a whisper. "One of them is the Crown Prince's chief strategist, Sir Bai. Sir Bai is especially dangerous. Setting aside his high cultivation base, there are countless secret tunnels and mechanisms in his residence alone. Just inside his residence, there are countless mechanisms and secret passages, many of which are more than 100 feet underground, and there is even a secret passage that leads to 500 miles out of the city. Other than that, Sir Bai has more than one substitute," Venerable Lord Snow said. Venerable Lord Snow said, His substitutes are hiding in his residence. From what I know, there are at least 3 of them. Even if one of them is killed, it's hard to determine if it's the real body or a substitute. His many substitutes, be it their expressions, height, weight, or even their auras, are exactly the same. There's no way to differentiate them in detail. So there's such a thing. This is a little tricky. Yunyang frowned and began to ponder, his palms breaking out in cold sweat. It was fortunate that he did not act rashly. Otherwise he would have fallen into a trap. As for the other person, he's the marshal of one of them, Venerable Lord Snow said. Venerable Lord Snow said, he's a high official in the Board of War, the 3rd person in the military after Fu Baogua. He's specifically in charge of approving military plans. Wing. Yunyang's expression changed abruptly when he heard the words. Wing? Yunyang thought the name sounded familiar, but he did not feel that it was familiar at the same time. This person was just like his name, untraceable and hard to trace. This person held a position in the Board of War and had his own courtyard. He was specifically in charge of approving military plans. His position was extremely high, and the reason he had such a high position was that his military accomplishment was unimaginably high. There was basically nothing that could be changed about any plan that came out from his hands. Not only did no one dare to change it, but no one could. Ever since he had taken up this position, not only had he not made any mistakes, he had never even stepped out of the courtyard. Only a few trusted aides would send him all the required information, and he would toss them out of the window after he was done with the verification. Such a maverick could not even be considered as a reclusive person. He was simply living in seclusion. As time went by, everyone knew that there was such a person in the Board of War. He was high and powerful, but he never showed his face. Therefore, Yutong's official's evaluation of him was that he was a person who was only willing to lower his head and work honestly. Even when old Grand Commandant Fang Qingtian was sick and unable to handle many matters, and Fu Baogua was not around, Wu Ying could still manage all the work in the Board of War in an orderly manner with only a few pieces of paper. There was no trouble at all. Everything he had handled had proven one thing. He was a wise man who could devise strategies and determine victory from 1,000 miles away. This person was Fang Qingtian Qiu Jianhan, and the other old marshal's most trusted and most valued person. Based on the current situation, after the old Grand Commandant passed away and Fu Baogua did not return from guarding the border, the future number 1 person in the Board of War would only be this person. No one could do it better than him. Fu Baogua had even said that this person had the talent to rule the world and that he was far inferior to him in military matters. It was also because of this reason that when Yunyang was looking for the traitor, he had even investigated the Empress herself thoroughly. Even the Emperor was within his range of suspicion and he did not trust Qiu Jianhan and Leng Daoyin 100%. However, he had never thought that the traitor would be this person. Even now, when Venerable Lord Snow uttered this name, Yunyang felt as if a bolt from the blue had exploded in his heart, but there was also an incredulous thought. What's going on with him? Unbelievable, Yunyang murmured. Until now Yunyang had even thought that Venerable Lord Snow was slandering Wu Ying. However, after thinking about it again and again he still believed it. This was because the most unlikely traitor might not necessarily not be a traitor. The most impossible person was usually the one who was in the dark. I know that young master must have doubts. Actually, the proof that Wu Ying is marshal can be very simple. This person has an extremely high cultivation base. Venerable Lord Snow said, at least it's higher than ours. I think this proof is enough. Yunyang was immediately enlightened. It was true that if Wu Ying only had a certain level of cultivation base, it could not be considered as proof. However, if he had an ability that was even higher than the 3 venerable lords, then it would be a huge problem. Just the theory of him hiding in the imperial court could not be justified. There's one more thing that I need to reiterate. This person's intelligence is not any weaker than Sir Bai's. Venerable Lord Snow said, compared to Mr. Nian who has always been famous in the world, these 2 are the real venomous snakes of the Four Seasons Tower, the real venomous warriors. Strictly speaking, their positions in the Four Seasons Tower aren't very high. They're even below us and have to be restrained by our venerable lords. However, when it comes to worldly affairs, especially those related to Yutong, Zhou, Dongshan, Deyuan, and other empires, these places, no matter what the Four Seasons Tower does, it has to go through their hands. These 2 people are the civil and martial ministers of the Four Seasons Tower. Yunyang's body swayed as he sighed faintly. If he had the Four Seasons Tower's intelligence network as a foundation, Wu Ying's halo of knowing everything in the world and being able to devise all sorts of schemes could be reduced by a little. Therefore we must proceed with caution. We can't afford to be careless. Venerable Lord Snow had repeated this more than 10 times that night. I understand. I truly understand now. Yun Yang said, if I don't have complete confidence, I won't act rashly and alert the enemy. He then stood up and said, rest well here, the three of you. This is a very secluded place. I can guarantee that as long as you don't show yourselves, those assassins won't be able to find you even if they flip the entire Tiantang city upside down. Compared to them, I Yun Yang am the true local boss of Tiantang city. He said softly, therefore, the three of you should take care of yourselves first and recuperate quickly. In the future, we have plenty of time. The three of them nodded in unison. Looking at the 2 bottles of medicinal pills that Yun Yang left behind before he left, the three of them were overwhelmed with emotions. Yutong's young master Yun was indeed a friend worth befriending. He was courageous, upright, and righteous. His strong sense of brotherhood went without saying. His meticulous care was enough to move one's heart and leave a lasting impression on them. It's a pity that we were on the opposite side from the start. The knot in our hearts is always hard to untie. Venerable Lord Sword sighed slightly. Otherwise, I would really like to have a closer relationship with such a friend. Venerable Lord Snow snorted and said, put away your extravagant hopes. Young Master Yun has been extremely benevolent to us. Befriending him is only creating trouble for him. My only wish now is to repay young Master's favor as much as I can. Whether I roam the world from now on or retire into seclusion in the forest, I'm so tired. Venerable Lord Frost sighed as well. The three of them spoke no more, remaining silent. Yun Yang returned to his residence and frowned, not speaking for a long time. Just from the 3 venerable lords' descriptions, Yun Yang could imagine how terrifying these 2 people, one civil and one martial, were. Just like what he had said, to deal with these 2 people they could not act rashly. Only under the premise that they had a 100% chance of success and had to deal with both of them at the same time could they act. Otherwise, even if they could take down one of them, the other would vanish from this world immediately. Yun Yang could even guarantee that if these 2 people were to disappear, he might not be able to find them again even if he exhausted his entire life with his current ability. Yun Yang frowned, racking his brains to come up with a foolproof plan of action. However, what made him feel the most helpless was that Ling Xiaozue and the other 3 were not here. Just like what Ling Xiaozue had said, do you need the 4 of us to be your bodyguards for such a trivial matter in Tiantang City? Now that we're targeting Mr. Nian, it means that the 4 Seasons Tower's top management has been delegated to the 4 of us. The rest are useless, why would we need to do anything? Therefore they had left last night, not even allowing Yun Yang to watch the battle of the century from the sidelines. As expected, they had not returned since they left. Yun Yang did not know how much their situation had evolved. In spite of this, Yun Yang thought that he could not count on the 4 old men for this battle. In spite of this, he could only rely on the forces he had on hand to deal with these 2 extremely frightening characters. When it rains, it pours. Bai Yishue was not here yet, and he still had to leave someone behind to protect Bauer and ensure his safety. Based on this, the soldiers he could use were truly limited. How could he ensure that he could take down the 2 men without any mistakes? We are severely understaffed. Yun Yang sighed gloomily. Chapter 623. It was not that the current situation was not optimistic, it was pessimistic. Yun Yang sighed, his thoughts whirling. How could he kill 2 peerless experts with such a limited force? What's not enough? A clear and melodious voice rang out. Yun Yang looked towards the source of the voice. Ji Lingxi was dressed in white, like a fairy who had suddenly walked down from the moon. She stood elegantly in front of him, her beautiful eyes like limpid autumn waters as she looked over. Yun Yang's heart began to thump furiously. Ever since that day he did not know what had happened to him, but every time he saw Ji Lingxi, he felt that the girl was so beautiful. Moreover, this beauty seemed to have a kind of magic that could captivate one's soul. The medicine he had applied on her previously was still applied to her face, but when he looked at her, he could only feel that the person before him was so devastatingly beautiful, so beautiful that it was hard to describe. It was an elegance that came from her bones. She had a fairy-like physique, as if there was an aura of immortality swirling around her. She was otherworldly. Even with Yun Yang's composure, he still felt that he was losing control of himself, wanting to do something bad. Now that he saw the girl looking at him lovingly, he wailed in his heart, "This is killing me." Just a touch was enough to kill him, but she was so seductive. But who could resist such temptation? It's none of your business. Yun Yang frowned instinctively. Facing such an irresistible temptation at such a frustrating time, He could not help feeling flustered. He subconsciously put on the airs of a big brother. Girl, why aren't you resting? What are you doing out here? If he did not put on the airs of a big brother, he might really be bewitched by this girl. Ji Lingxi quietly rolled her eyes and said, why did I come out again? I'm just here to talk to you while I'm cultivating. Why am I not even receiving this treatment now? Yun Yang said in a seemingly sincere tone, Lingxi, you know that the martial world is unusually chaotic now. There might be traps and ambushes everywhere. You can't fall behind in your cultivation base no matter what. You're still young and haven't experienced the dangers of Jianghu. Be a good boy and quickly go back to practice. Listening to Yun Yang's pretentious tone, Ji Lingxi almost laughed out loud. She sat down opposite him and said with a smile, you don't have to be so stubborn. Tell me what's on your mind, maybe I can help you with some ideas. 2 heads are better than 1. I'll give you some advice. It's better than you working behind closed doors. Ji Lingxi's natural action of sitting down seemed to be mixed with an inexplicable immortal aura that kept surging from her. Yun Yang stared straight ahead, his Adam's apple bobbed as he said with difficulty, I think I'm not young anymore. Ji Lingxi narrowed her eyes. What do you mean by that? Yun Yang coughed and said, I just think that I should look for a wife, or rather have a woman. Just as he finished his sentence, Yun Yang wanted to slap himself 19 times. Why did this sentence come out of his mouth? Even if he thought that way, he couldn't say it out loud. Oh my God. These were Yun Yang's thoughts right now. Yun Yang did not know what was going on these few days, but he knew that Ji Lingxi was getting more and more attractive to him. It was getting harder and harder to resist. It had completely conquered his previously tranquil state of mind. Each time he saw it, his heart would flutter and his soul would leave his body. He would even dream of it, unable to forget it. He really wanted to touch it, hug it, kiss it, and then do that, or that, but, no way, no way. Once he thought of the price he had to pay for hugging her, of being flung so far away and having his organs overturned, of bleeding from all orifices, of being severely injured and so on, Yun Yang could still suppress his restless heart. At the same time, Yun Yang could not help but realize that he was aroused. This time he was really aroused. For the next few nights, he would occasionally cough. There was even one morning when he realized that there was a big, sticky and dried lump in his blankets. Based on all the above, Yun Yang clearly realized that he had grown up and should find a woman. What he had said earlier was his true thoughts. He had buried them in his heart and had never spoken them out loud. After all, these words were not something that could be spoken out casually. However, he did not expect that when Ji Lingxi came today, he would suddenly feel that the attraction he felt this time was much stronger than any other time before. Then he did not know which muscle in his brain spasmed, but the moment his upper and lower lips touched, he began to moan. Ji Lingxi smiled sweetly and said, I didn't expect young Master Yun to have the thought of starting a family. That's not easy. I wonder if you have someone that you like? She smiled as if she was not nervous at all. However, one could vaguely see that her upper and lower teeth seemed to be pressed together while her gaze was glinting coldly. I've just confessed to you a few days ago. It's fine that you didn't respond. Now you want to find a woman? What do you want? Who do you want to find? Yin Yang coughed dryly. Currently, I don't think there's anyone, right? No. She actually said, no? The answer was more detestable than he had imagined. Did she not see that there was a lively one right in front of her? Ji Lingxi's smile grew gentler, the icy glint in the depths of her eyes almost uncontrollable. She gritted her teeth and said with a smile, Does young Master Yun have any specific requirements for your women? We're on the same side. Why don't you tell me? Perhaps I can think of something for you? She said with infinite gentleness, You should know very well that I have a lot of little sisters. Every one of them is a young lady from a respectable family. They have good looks, good figures, good family background, good manners, good temperament, and even if they want to be well-versed in both literature and martial arts, there are many of them who are talented and good-looking. Yun Yang was dumbfounded by Ji Lingxi's words. He was puzzled by his current state of mind as well. Was he not thinking about how to deal with those two people just now? Was he not lamenting about his lack of manpower and his incompetence? Why did the topic suddenly change to a completely unrelated place? What kind of twist was this? It was 2F** King mystical. However, for some reason Yun Yang actually began to ponder Ji Lingxi's words almost instinctively. Seeing that he did not speak for a long time, Ji Lingxi could not help urging him, Tell me quickly. How would I know what you like if you don't tell me? There has to be a direction. Yun Yang coughed dryly and murmured, Actually, I don't have a high requirement. As long as it's a woman. Ji Lingxi chuckled and said, "It's the hardest if there's no requirement. It's easier to choose with specific requirements. There's a peerless beauty in front of you, do you understand? You actually want to, as long as it's a woman. Are you trying to drive me to my grave? Are you trying to get me killed?" Yun Yang coughed again, seeming to think seriously for a moment before he said, "Well, as long as it's a hug and a kiss and doesn't get beaten up, it's fine. Like Shangguan?" Bang, 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 bang. Yun Yang was flung away, his limbs flailing. Bang. Chapter 624. Lao Mei sprang out like his buttocks were on fire. "Young master, what's wrong? Is there an enemy attack?" Yun Yang stood up with a grimace. "Don't worry, I can still handle it." Lao Mei pursed his lips and secretly rolled his eyes. Then Ji Lingxi stormed out of Yun Yang's yard and strode back to her room, slamming the door shut with a loud bang. It was a terrifying sight to behold. Yun Yang heaved a long sigh and shrugged, saying helplessly, "Lao Mei, it's a wise decision for you not to have a wife in your entire life. Let me tell you, the hardest thing to please in this world is none other than a woman." Lao Mei's lips moved, finally letting out a long sigh as he said, "Young master, have I ever told you that it's not that I don't want to find a wife, it's just that I've been waiting for someone?" Yun Yang was stunned. "Lao Mei, I didn't know you were such a womanizer." Lao Mei was speechless. King hell, your father wants to flip the table. I've been single for most of my life, and I'm King womanizer? Young master, you're so good with words. Does your father know about it?" Ji Lingxi, who had returned to her room, was already flushed red. Her chest was still heaving as she cursed softly, "This pervert. Filthy. Despicable. 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 I'm so angry." Ji Lingxi was puzzled as well. This fellow had been behaving like an otherworldly Taoist scholar a few days ago. How had he become a gangster in just a few days? What exactly had happened in the process? What she did not know was that Yun Yang could not be blamed for this. The reason, or rather the key, was her own aura and aura. The sudden change, the drastic change, was so tempting that it could not be described with words. In addition, a certain someone had confessed to Yun Yang a few days ago, causing his heart to waver. How could he be as calm as still water? Of course, he had a change of heart, such as should I find a wife or not? After such a change, there would be no more questions that would follow. It would only continue to develop in one direction, and that was, it was time for him to find a wife. Of course, there was another equally crucial factor. It was also because of Ji Lingxi. The red glow on Ji Lingxi had given Yun Yang a great sense of hope. With such an unparalleled master holding the line, his brothers were definitely not dead. This was too important to Yun Yang. It was because of this additional change that Yun Yang's mindset had changed, or rather, it had changed Yun Yang's life from now on. The depression and guilt that had accumulated in his heart had dissipated by more than half in an instant. If he had retained his original mentality, he would only play dumb and bluff his way through no matter how irresistibly seductive and irresistible Ji Lingxi had presented him. He would never have taken any proactive actions. No matter how much his heart raced, he would only have played dumb to get away with it. Of course, Ji Lingxi could not comprehend the complicated details. Even when Yun Yang's drastic psychological change originated from her and her own unsolved mystery, it was still the same. She sat on the chair and rested her chin on her hands. She could not help recalling the strange dream that she had been having for the past few nights. How could I have the same dream for so many days consecutively? This is inexplicable. What is going on? Is it reminding me of something? Or is fate hinting at something? Everything is inexplicable. Most of it is blurry and I can't see it clearly. What is that image? Why does it make me feel so familiar? Ji Lingxi was lost in her thoughts, recalling the scenes of her dreams these few nights. I can only comprehend everything myself. Even if Sister Yu is still here, I can't ask her. What I've experienced can't be described with simple words. It's just that my cultivation base has improved in the time it takes to dream at night. After 4 to 5 consecutive nights, my cultivation base has skyrocketed from the beginner realm of the heaven realm to the 9th heaven. If it's the same tonight, how can I advance to the Tao realm? Ji Lingxi looked inward again to check on her cultivation base progress. She was baffled and in disbelief. This feeling, it's not even as surreal as a dream. It's broad daylight, but I still feel like I'm in a dream. Everything feels so surreal. If I have this dream every night from now on, it won't be difficult for me to ascend to the Tao realm. Even becoming an immortal won't be a difficult task. Ji Lingxi was stunned. What's wrong with my body? How can there be such an unbelievable change? Ji Lingxi checked every aspect of her body, meridians. Everything is in perfect condition. There are no flaws at all. If I must point out a specific change, it seems like only my breasts seem to have grown bigger during this period of time. Ji Lingxi propped her hands against her chest, blushing involuntarily. Her eyes wandered as her imagination ran wild. The night passed uneventfully. Early the next morning, Ji Lingxi opened her eyes. Her gaze was thick with doubt and intense shock. I've really ascended to the Dao realm and I'm at the pinnacle of the first-tier Dao realm? But why is the dream even more blurry this time? After a strange, blurry dream where I can't see anything clearly, my cultivation base has skyrocketed. What is this? Ji Lingxi laid on the bed, her eyes filled with bewilderment. Her eyes were filled with question marks. Since the beginning of time she had never heard of such a strange thing. A night of sleep and a dream, and her cultivation base had skyrocketed, level by level. How heaven-defying was this? If this could happen, what was the point of cultivating? Why would they still need treasures? They could just sleep every day. Even a novel wouldn't dare to write such a rapid increase in cultivation. There was no logic, no precedent, and no feasibility at all. However, such an unrealistic thing had happened to him. What could he do? Ji Lingxi got up from the bed, washed her face, and dressed herself up. Suddenly she realized something very important. My cultivation base seems to be higher than Yun Yang's now. In front of Yun Yang's door, a certain person who had cultivated for the entire night felt that his cultivation base had improved again. He was only a step away from the 9th heaven realm. My cultivation base has improved quite well these few days. I believe that I'll be able to look down on this generation with such progress and no one will be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with me. Yun Yang, who was feeling proud, opened the door and mused, "It's good that my cultivation base has improved, but I can't be blindly arrogant. I should go according to my original plan and test Sir Bai, see if there are any other fortuitous encounters." Just as he pushed the door open, he saw Ji Lingxi standing at the door of his room, dressed in martial attire. She was holding a staff that was neither too long nor too short in her hands. Yun Yang was startled, instinctively covering his angry-looking erection. "What are you doing?" Ji Lingxi had not noticed that at first, but when she saw his attempt to cover it up, she blushed and said through gritted teeth, What do you think about every day?" Yun Yang bowed, looking flustered. "I don't think about you, how could you, Yun Yang?" Ji Lingxi was enraged, her eyes spitting fire. "How can you let such a beautiful morning light go to waste? Come, let me spar with you and exhaust some of your exuberant energy." Chapter 625. Yun Yang hurriedly cultivated the frozen heart charm and only straightened himself after a long while. He chuckled and said, "Spar? Let's talk about it later. My cultivation base has improved recently. I might not be able to control my strength as well." It was obvious that he did not take Ji Lingxi seriously at all. His words were a high compliment to his own ability. It was only then that a certain someone managed to suppress his reaction, wondering what had happened to him in the past few days. There had never been such a situation in the past. He really did not think much of Ji Lingxi and, of course, neglected the fact that she had become a Dao realm expert in a split second. Logically, even if she had consumed an immortal pill, it was impossible for her to leap from a beginner level of heaven realm to a Dao realm expert. How could Ji Lingxi, who was full of ambition, tolerate being ignored by someone whose cultivation base was lower than hers? She turned and leaped into the yard. "Cut the nonsense. Come quickly." She could not stay any longer. Her heart was beating too fast. Yun Yang walked down the stairs in a carefree manner. He picked up a staff in a graceful manner and said in a sanctimonious manner, "Fine, I shall coach you on behalf of my 8th brother today and give you some pointers on your martial arts." Yun Yang had held back most of his strength when they exchanged blows, afraid that he would really hurt Ji Lingxi. However, Ji Lingxi had gone all out right from the start. Caught off guard, Yun Yang was struck dumb the first time they met. He could only let out a strange cry, What the hell?" A moment later, Ji Lingxi tossed the staff away and turned to leave with her head held high. Her face was filled with arrogance, but her words could still be heard from afar. "I've learned a lot from today's spar. It looks like cultivation can't be done behind closed doors, it needs to be done with actual combat. From today onwards, I'll come and spar with you every morning. You said it yourself, cultivation base has to be improved. The martial world is just so treacherous." The girl had returned what Yun Yang had said yesterday word for word. She had said it in a righteous and dignified manner. At the scene, Yun Yang was covered in dust and there was a huge bump on his forehead like a unicorn. His handsome face was blank. Who can tell me what's going on? Wasn't this girl at the beginning of the heaven realm? How could someone with such a cultivation level suppress me like this? No matter how powerful a treasure of heaven and earth he consumed, it was impossible for him to directly rise to the Tao realm overnight, right? His body couldn't handle it at all. What was going on? Did I see a ghost? It hurt so much. Young Master Yun touched the bump on his forehead. His mind was in a mess. It was only now that he felt the pain. He was really shocked before. This was clearly impossible, something that did not make any sense at all, yet it had happened so vividly in front of him. How could Yun Yang not be dumbfounded? Yun Yang had witnessed how Ji Lingxi had ascended from the peak realm to the heaven realm. Just a few days ago, Ji Lingxi was still complaining that she had been stuck at beginner heaven realm for a long time. He even comforted him with kind words such as, "It's already extremely rare for you to make such progress at your age, and you can't be impatient when it comes to cultivation." But now, he who had already reached the 9th firmament of heaven realm, was beaten up. He had been beaten the entire time. "I've been cultivating with all my might every day." Yun Yang wanted to cry. "Emmy, come out quickly. Open up the space quickly. I can't take it anymore." It was fine if a miracle happened to someone else. However, this person was prepared to beat him up every morning. How could he tolerate this? Furthermore, Yun Yang recalled how he had sounded like an elder brother in front of Ji Lingxi and almost fell to the ground. Beaten up like this every day, how could he still have the cheek to say that he was his elder brother? How could he still have the cheek to say that he was taking care of him on behalf of his elder brother? To be a coach to guide his cultivation base? He was not even a sparring partner, he was just a target. Ji Lingxi's voice rang out, "Yun Yang, I'll take care of you on behalf of my elder brother in the future." Yun Yang covered his face with his hands. This girl. How dare she say this? She was asking for a spanking. Life was like a play and the play was like life. It was unpredictable and indescribable indeed. The residence of Crown Prince. His Highness the Crown Prince had been wearing a gloomy expression all this while. There was hardly a moment of joy on his face. After all, ever since his father the Emperor had announced that his eldest brother's posthumous son had returned to Yutong, His Highness the Crown Prince had been living in an atmosphere of impending doom. No one would be able to feel at ease. The right of succession and Yutong's throne that was already firmly in his grasp had suddenly become precarious. The chair that he was sitting on could sprout wings and fly away at any time. It would be strange if he was in a good mood. Now, every day when he went to court, every time he made eye contact with his father the Emperor, he could always feel that the other party's gaze was not right. It was a gaze filled with disappointment, anger, and deep disgust. Naturally, His Highness the Crown Prince's mood was even worse. Recently, he had been jolted awake by nightmares every night, sitting up in a daze, drenched in cold sweat, his eyes glazed and his face pale. His Highness the Crown Prince had not rested well for a few consecutive nights. Even the Crown Princess was about to go crazy from the Crown Prince's strange behavior. In spite of this, the Crown Prince's bad luck was far from over for his career and life. To target the child who could affect the current situation and should not remain hidden, His Highness had secretly arranged for Sir Bai to help contact the assassin organizations. He had even paid half of the deposit. In spite of this, what made His Highness the Crown Prince choke on his breath was, it was not that the assassins did not come. In fact, all the assassins he had contacted earlier had come, and they had come in waves. Amidst his initial joy, His Highness could not help wondering who had found the rest of the assassins when he had only instructed for 2 waves. This was a huge problem. Although His Highness the Crown Prince was happy to see the results, he still had to pay attention to the problem. The more assassins there were, the more people with ulterior motives. Similarly, there were also many people who coveted the throne. How could His Highness be careless? Furthermore, no matter who had found the assassins, the Crown Prince would have to shoulder the blame at this critical juncture. After all, His Highness was the biggest and most direct beneficiary of this matter. In spite of this, if the matter were to end successfully and the child was gone, he would have to shoulder the blame. It did not matter. To achieve great things, one could not be bothered with trifles. Some minor issues were inevitable, they could be made up for later. However, after so many assassins had come, what was the meaning of gathering and not doing anything? You came with such a huge commotion that everyone in Tiantang City knows about it. The fear is secondary, but all the officials in the imperial court, including the Emperor and Empress, are looking at me strangely now. Do you know that? All the wealthy merchants and noble families are closing their doors and doors carefully, afraid that they might attract the assassins. In fact, there is no movement at all. Then what are you here for? Are you here to organize a group tour? Looking at the current situation, the gathering of the world's assassins is really like a gathering for a holiday. Can assassins really be related to your profession if they do not work? Can't you have a little more professionalism? Sense of time? How dare you claim to be one of the best assassin organizations in the world with this kind of behavior? His Highness had always thought so, but he could not help but feel even more depressed these days. If you don't want to work, then don't. Even if you really only came for a tour, it doesn't matter. At most, your money will go down the drain. Can't you just lose money and avoid disaster? But, not only are you not going to work, but you want to fight among yourselves. What is the meaning of this? Some of you even came up with the dictum of death. What is the meaning of this? Are you still an assassin organization? You might as well build a nation of assassins. Assassin organizations have come, but they don't work. They've only probed a few times at the beginning and they've all become obedient after the deaths. What happened to the legendary rule of assassins? To protect the interests of the clients? What about the astonishing capability of a super assassin organization? As if they had heard His Highness' inner voice, the assassin organizations had begun their work, displaying their astonishing capability. The level of their capability had completely exceeded His Highness' understanding. However, their force was not targeted at a fixed target, but at internal strife. To His Highness, the Four Seasons Tower, the Merciless Tower, the Hall of Crimson Blade, they were all King martial world organizations. Since they were martial world organizations, they were all assassin organizations. Since they were all assassin organizations, what else could they be but internal strife? While the Crown Prince was helpless to do anything about the internal strife at such a crucial time, he could only sigh deeply. These martial world barbarians are really incapable of accomplishing anything but spoiling everything. They are so unreliable. Today they fight a few rounds here and a few people die. Tomorrow they fight a few more rounds here and a few more people die. Then the day after tomorrow, you guys are going to King start a final battle. You guys are going to start the final battle of the assassin world right here in the Empire of Yutong's capital city. Watching the martial world strife unfold like a raging fire, His Highness felt like 10,000 King horses were galloping through his heart. Can't you all do this after the proper business is done? You haven't even done any proper business and Tiantang City is almost destroyed by you all. All of you possess such formidable strength, why can't you first solve the client's goals? Can't you be a little more responsible, a little more professional? What's going on today? Has the dispute come to an end? His Highness asked, his expression still grim. I heard that the assassin organizations have won. Other than the top martial world force of the world, the Four Seasons Tower has been annihilated. A strategist said, Your Highness, this is good news for us. This martial world storm should be over. It has come to an end. The Crown Prince asked gloomily, I just want some good news right now. Where are they? Can they act immediately? They disappeared after the fight. The person looked rather awkward as he said, Your Highness Rong Bing, these martial world vagabonds are all skilled in martial arts. They're used to coming and going without a trace. It's difficult for us to pinpoint their exact whereabouts. We'll have to wait for them to contact us later. According to the assassin's rules, they'll have to give us an explanation since they've accepted our deposit. His Highness snorted and turned to ask, Sir Bai, what do you think? Sir Bai was dressed in a plain green robe. His face was lean with 3 long strands of beard, making him look even more elegant. He was tall and had a sage-like demeanor. Even His Highness the Crown Prince treated Sir Bai with great respect, unlike how he treated his other advisors. Sir Bai stroked his long beard and said with a faint smile, Your Highness, what will come will come. You don't have to be too anxious. You must know that more haste, less speed. His Highness said in a troubled tone, Of course I know that, but there's no room for more buffering in the current situation. There's no time to lose. I have to be impatient. The fire is about to burn me. Just yesterday those brats also started to fan the flames, and the seeds were pointed directly at me. Empress Mother was still protecting me before, but now she called me into the palace. Other than scolding me, warning me, and talking about brotherly love, she didn't say anything else. The way she looked at me was full of resentment. If it were not for his image, His Highness really wanted to narrate the story in tears and snot. Sir Bai smiled warmly. These are merely trivial matters. They're far from being able to shake Your Highness' foundation. Your Highness, you really don't have to be too anxious. Being too impatient will only give others something to use against you. That's what it means to say more haste, less speed. He thought about it and said, His Majesty the Emperor has set his sights on that child, Yu Qingkuan. Everyone can see this and know it very well. It can even be said that there are only two people who have the chance and the right to inherit the throne at the moment. It's His Highness the Crown Prince and the eldest prince's posthumous son who popped out of nowhere. However, His Highness the Crown Prince's status in the East Palace has been established. This is the true advantage. Although Yu Qingkuan is in the Emperor's heart, he's still young. To grow to the point where he can control the imperial court, he still needs a lot of guidance and a long period of training. Sir Bai said, before that moment arrives, no matter how much His Majesty likes the Crown Prince, he won't act recklessly. Therefore, it's impossible for His Majesty to abdicate the Crown Prince's position as the Crown Prince of the East Palace. The inheritance of the throne is of great importance. There are too many uncertainties in a child's growth process. Besides, no one can tell how far he'll grow in the future. Therefore, even if it's the fastest speed and the age at which a person's nature can be seen, he'll need to be at least 11 or 12 years old. In other words, His Highness the Crown Prince has at least 7 to 8 years of leeway. In these 7 to 8 years of buffer time, no matter how displeased His Majesty is with His Highness, he won't act rashly. There are countless opportunities and countless methods that can be used within these 7 to 8 years. Therefore, there's still plenty of time to play the game. There's no need to act rashly. More haste, less speed. Sir Bai's explanation made the Crown Prince's expression lighten up slowly. He was a man of great foresight, so he could understand what Sir Bai was trying to convey. The latter was actually reminding him that he had acted too hastily in looking for assassins. Not only was his effort futile, but it had also given those with ulterior motives a chance to mess with him. However, he did not say it directly, but used a tactful method to point out the problem. It was the method of a wise man. Just as Sir Bai had said, Yu Qingkuan still needed a long period of growth to be a threat to the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince still had plenty of time to deal with him. There was no need to be impatient and give others something to use against him. He had been too rash. Now that he's here, we can't just do nothing, can we? Asked His Highness. Of course we can't do nothing. Sir Bai was confident. We still have to do it, but our current target needs to be changed. Our primary target can't be Yu Qingkuan. He said indifferently, I believe Your Highness Crown Prince should be aware that directly targeting Yu Qingkuan is too eye-catching. Furthermore, he is currently heavily guarded. If you rashly attacked him, it would be equivalent to reminding His Majesty the Emperor to increase his protection. Of course, the main reason is that we can hardly get the chance to come into contact with this child. Acting rashly will only result in more losses than gains. Then who do you want to target first, Sir Bai? Asked the Crown Prince. King Xiaoyao's heir Yunyang. Chapter 626. Our first target now should be King Xiaoyao's son Yunyang, Sir Bai said with a smile. His Majesty has placed Yu Qingkuan in the residence of King Yun. It's obvious that he trusts King Xiaoyao and has even hinted that he wants to entrust his son to him. The residence of King Xiaoyao is strong and the residence is located in the center of the capital city. The environment is naturally favorable. Not only is King Xiaoyao the top expert in Yutong, his son Yunyang's ability is also top-notch in Yutong. None of them are easy to deal with. Also, even if we disregard King Xiaoyao and his son, just the experts who come and go from the residence of King Yun and those who don't belong to the residence of King Yun are numerous. Just the strength of those guests is enough to intimidate the martial world. All in all, placing Yu Qingkuan in the residence of King Yun is indeed the safest and most secure place right now. Furthermore, His Majesty's action has greatly avoided the possibility of the child's growth being affected if he spoils him too much in the palace. His Majesty is truly thoughtful. From what I can see, placing Yu Qingkuan in the residence of King Yun is truly the fastest place for him to grow. There's no need to worry about his mind being affected by external factors. No one in the entire empire of Yutong would dare challenge King Yun's authority. To us, there's really no better way to deal with Yu Qingkuan other than attacking him forcefully. Even with the abilities of the assassin organizations, it's still difficult to take down the residence of King Yun. As long as there's a bit of buffer time, tens of thousands of troops will come to their aid. The relationship between the residence of King Yun and the military can only be described as unshakable since the Eastern Border War. Sir Bai's train of thought did not sound very clear during his narration. Some of his words were even a little confusing and contradictory. However, when he finished speaking, the listeners would naturally realize that they had already understood the entire situation without missing anything. Does this mean that we can't kill Yu Qingkuan then? The residence of King Yun is an unassailable presence? Then what Mr. said about changing the target to the crown prince of King Xiaoyao? Isn't it beyond our power to search for the one far away? The crown prince frowned again. No. Sir Bai said, my explanation is to point out that the residence of King Yun is indeed unsolvable from the outside. However, the so-called collapse doesn't necessarily have to be from the outside. Collapsing from the inside out is also an option. This method of disintegration is targeted at one person, Yun Yang. Sir Bai spoke slowly. Yun Yang is the most important link in the entire plan. As long as Yun Yang is dead, everything will be solved without any more obstacles. What? His Highness was utterly confused by Sir Bai's argument. Your Highness, please think about it. Why was King Yun chosen by His Majesty to be the assistant to cultivate another successor? The main reason is that he has no desires. In fact, he is so carefree that it is unimaginable for ordinary people. The so-called high position and generous salary are no longer attractive to him, who is already on par with the king. How could the so-called gold and silver move the heart of a cultivation expert like him? As for beautiful wives and concubines, the temptation of beauty is even more difficult to sway his mind. That's why he can carry out the task His Majesty has given him better than anyone else. It's just that his weakness is also his strength. He really has no desires. As long as someone kills Yun Yang, King Yun's transcendental state of mind can be shattered. Sir Bai's voice was like a breeze, but the words that came out of his mouth were malicious. As long as Yun Yang is dead, King Yun's state of mind will change. He'll go mad, he'll be enraged. However, whether he's mad or enraged, his attention will inevitably be diverted from Yu Chengkuan. At the very least, it'll be difficult for him to be as attentive and responsible as he is now. I think by then he'll only think of ways to find his son's murderer and avenge his son. Even if His Majesty intervenes, it'll be difficult to change King Xiaoyao's mind. When that time comes, it'll be our real chance. Not bad. His Highness was enlightened, his eyes glowing. His own son is dead. How can he still be in the mood to take care of someone else's grandson? Sir Bai's plan is marvelous indeed. Actually, the biggest advantage of this plan is its practicality. Yun Yang is different from Yu Chengkuan. Yun Yang's martial skill is strong and his cultivation base is profound. After the battle at the Fortress of Resilience, his reputation has risen and he can be said to be the top talent of Yutang's younger generation. He's an existence that no one in Tiantang City dares to provoke. He can move about here and there. Not only are there plenty of opportunities for us to strike, it's also very convenient. Sir Bai smiled, unruffled. Plenty of opportunities and convenience usually means that the chances of success will be higher. The so-called profound cultivation base and martial skill are secondary. His Highness slapped his thigh. All right, let's do it. At this moment, a voice came reporting from outside the door. Your Highness, young Master Yun Yang requests an audience. His Highness' eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Even Sir Bai, who had been calm and composed all this while, was subconsciously shocked. Yun Yang? What was he doing here? His timing was impeccable. They were discussing how to get rid of him, but he had actually come knocking on their door. Was it true that one should not talk about someone behind their back? Now that they had talked about him, he had come straight to their home. The Crown Prince looked at Sir Bai, speechless. He was probably bewildered. He had tried to rope Yun Yang in both openly and covertly, but it had never been effective. The other party had ignored him, the Crown Prince. Why had he come knocking on his door today? There must be something fishy when things are out of the ordinary. There must be a reason why this popular Crown Prince of King Yun has come here so abruptly. The rest of you leave for now. Don't let him think that we're discussing something. Sir Bai said leisurely, I'll stay and see what this young Master Yun wants to do. His Highness was relieved to hear that. He smiled and said, that would be best. No matter what, the visitor was a guest. His Highness the Crown Prince had to welcome him, especially in such a situation. It did not matter where Yun Yang died, but he could not die in the Crown Prince's residence. Otherwise, the Crown Prince would become everyone's target and be doomed eternally. Why is young Master Yun interested in visiting me today? I am truly overwhelmed by your favor. His Highness the Crown Prince went out to welcome Yun Yang with enthusiasm. Those who did not know better would have thought that he and Yun Yang were good brothers. It was even possible that they were old acquaintances. I've missed you after not seeing you for so long. Yun Yang laughed. Why, your Highness doesn't welcome me? What are you saying, Brother Yun? His Highness pretended to be angry and grabbed Yun Yang's arm. Please. You're finally here today. I won't let you go. Come, come, you must drink with me. We won't leave until we're drunk. Amidst their banter, both of them walked forward with their arms intertwined. At the door, Sir Bai stood with a smile, watching Yun-yang who was approaching. His gaze was warm, but his scrutiny was hidden. Sir Bai, allow me to introduce you. This is Tiantang City's current popular figure, young Master Yun-yang. His Highness introduced him warmly. Sir Bai, didn't you say that you've heard of young Master Yun for a long time and that you've wanted to meet him for a long time? Great, I've brought him right here to you. You've gotten a great bargain today. Sir Bai raised his hands in a salute. I've heard of young Master Yun's great name for a long time. You're like thunder in my ears, like the bright moon in the sky. Yun-yang laughed and returned the salute, saying, Not at all. I'm the one who has truly heard of Sir Bai. After exchanging pleasantries for a while, the three of them entered the hall and took their seats as host and guest. His Highness only got to the main topic after a bunch of meaningless chatter. I've always thought that a noble person like young Master Yun would keep a respectful distance from me and never leave my side. I believe you wouldn't visit me without a reason, would you? His Highness smiled, expressing his dissatisfaction in a joking tone. Your Highness, you're straightforward with your words. Yun-yang likes to speak like this the most. Everything is laid out on the table, it's the simplest and clearest. Yun-yang chuckled. Yun-yang does have something to ask of you this time, but it has nothing to do with your Highness. It's somewhat related to Sir Bai. The Crown Prince was surprised. Yun-yang's words were obviously out of his Highness's expectation. According to what the Crown Prince knew, Sir Bai and Yun-yang were two different kinds of people. If it were not for the Crown Prince's relationship, Sir Bai would not have targeted Yun-yang at all. Yun-yang's words were sudden and inexplicable. Sir Bai looked at Yun-yang doubtfully as well. I'm flattered to hear this, but it seems that I've only just met young Master Yun today. I wonder what young Master Yun needs me for? I don't know why young Master Yun thinks that I can answer young Master Yun's request. Please enlighten me, young Master Yun. Yun-yang laughed, his expression relaxed as he said, I've only just met Sir Bai, but Sir Bai's name has long filled my ears. Sir Bai's reputation as the unrivaled Go player in Tiantang City is truly well known. Coincidentally, my cultivation base has been stagnant recently and I've been using Go to calm myself down. A few days ago I came across an incomplete manual. It's rather difficult and abstruse, but I couldn't figure it out. I've taken the liberty of coming here to ask for your guidance, Sir Bai. Sir Bai said with a smile, I don't deserve to be called the unrivaled Go player in Tiantang City. I wonder how young Master Yin knows that I know how to play Go? I've rarely touched Go pieces all these years, other than sparring with good friends. I didn't expect young Master Yun to find out. Yin-yang laughed. There's a reason for this. Speaking of Tiantang City's Go player, Sir Bai isn't the most famous. In fact, I've looked for that person as well. Yes, it's the Go King Tang Yishi. Sir Bai was hit with a sudden realization and chided Yun-yang jokingly, so it was that fellow who sold me out. I've always been a nobody, how did I catch young Master Yun's eye and come all the way here? Yun-yang guffawed and said, the so-called twists and turns are just that. Tang Yishu found it hard to decipher the Go playbook as well. After I allowed him to make a copy for him, he told me that Sir Bai is the current national player in Go. He, who has the reputation of the Go King, has played with Sir Bai many times, but he has never won against Sir Bai even once. Yun-yang smiled and said, that's why I've come looking for you. Sir Bai said in surprise, Tang Yishi's Go skill is superb and he's worthy of the title of Go King. There's actually a Go playbook that he can't decipher? I'm interested to see for myself. Yun-yang laughed. Go King Tang said that day that you'd be interested as long as I told Sir Bai that he couldn't decipher the Go playbook. It looks like Go King Tang is truly Sir Bai's confidant. Sir Bai laughed as well. I'm naturally like this. It's inevitable that I'll make a fool of myself in my excitement. Young Master Yun, I wonder where the playbook is now. Can you let me play it for a while? Yun-yang said, I've come to ask for guidance. Of course the playbook is with me. However, would it be inconvenient if we start the game here? The Crown Prince guffawed. I'm a fan of Go as well. It's my pleasure to see such a playbook that can baffle a Go King. After a series of instructions, the three of them entered the Go room impatiently. The Go board was already set up. With a pleased smile, Yun-yang slowly took out an ancient book from his embrace. It was a playbook that looked to be at least a few hundred years old. This is the first game. Yun-yang flipped to the first page of the ancient book and started moving his hands around the Go board. Both the Crown Prince and Sir Bai observed the chess moves with a serious expression. The number of black and white Go pieces on the table increased, the changes becoming more and more complicated. Naturally, the calculation became more difficult. After about 40 to 50 moves, Sir Bai's eyes would light up with each move. When the game reached 98th move, the black Go piece seemed to be going deep alone, but it was actually a brilliant move that made Sir Bai exclaim, "Brilliant! Brilliant!" Yunyang laughed and said, "It's brilliant, of course. However, the most exciting part is yet to come." Yunyang stopped when he reached the 135th move. The Crown Prince and Sir Bai frowned at once. In a normal game of Go, the 135th move was probably the number of moves that were nearing the end of the game. It was not surprising, but the complexity of the game was giving both of them headaches. Based on the current situation, the black Go piece had an obvious advantage, but the white Go piece was ready to strike with an extremely solid counterattack. It was like a sword being unsheathed and a bow being knocked. There was still a chance for a counterattack to decide the outcome. Chapter 627. Sir Bai was no longer as calm as before. His brows were tightly furrowed, his attention fully focused on the Go board. In an ordinary game of Go, when it reached the number of 135 moves, the general trend was basically set. Unless it was some particularly high-level and relatively well-matched opponents, there would be no clear winner or loser due to chance encounters. In spite of this, there would always be a difference in the number of black and white pieces. It was easy to tell which side had the upper hand. Even when both sides were extremely cautious and their arrangements were exceptionally solid, there was still a slight difference. In spite of this, the game Yunyang had laid out was obviously different. Both sides had been engaged in an intense battle right from the beginning. It was all hand-to-hand combat of life and death. However, this was not surprising. What was surprising was that both sides had yet to move a single piece up to the 135th move. This was an unbelievable result. There were flashes of swords and sabers everywhere, every step filled with murderous intent, but there was not the slightest loss or gain from moving a piece. As the game progressed, it became more and more dangerous. Whether it was the black or white sides or even the entire game, it was shrouded in an atmosphere of take a step back, take a step forward and plunge into a bottomless abyss. If you don't cut my throat, I'll stab your heart. This was the situation. The 136 moves should be whites. In spite of this, Sir Bai held a white piece in his hand, hesitating and unable to make a move. Break? He then shook his head. No, if we break off here it would seem like a good move, but in reality, we would be falling into the enemy's trap. Once the enemy counterattacks, not only will we lose everything we have, we will even drag one of our own dragons into the fray. Will be like a landslide. Clamp? You can't clamp it. Forcing it is like drawing legs on a snake. Push? That won't do. It'll only expose your own weakness and hasten your own defeat. Fly. Too weak in response, giving the enemy a chance. Point? Not good. Push? That won't do. Is this a robbery? But how can such a game of Go be a robbery? There's no robbery material. Sir Bai watched the game step by step. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that the black piece was harboring malicious intentions. Each move was filled with the glint of swords and shadows, filled with traps. On the other hand, Bai Qi had been advancing with great care, setting up countless ambushes. He had already reached his limit. At this point, whoever made the first move would fall into the special situation of being attacked. In the words of cultivators, it was like two peerless experts fighting on the battlefield. First, they fought fiercely for 300 rounds without a clear winner. Sir Bai countered with a counterattack, and the situation seemed to be in his favor. However, Yunyang's black piece flew out and embedded itself in the white piece's dragon. The situation changed drastically. If Sir Bai were to take care of the other side, the dragon would inevitably be broken into two halves, putting him in an unprecedented passive position. However, if he were to try his best to keep the dragon intact, he would need to make 3 moves to protect it completely. His side would inevitably be taken advantage of by the other side. Even the most conservative estimate would cost him at least 5 eyes. In a match between experts like this, even a difference of half eye was enough to affect the outcome, much less 5 eyes. How could he dare to make a loss? Unable to attend to one thing and lose another, he could not advance or retreat. It was obvious that this method would not work. This still won't do. I'll change again. In the time it took to eat a meal, Sir Bai had consecutively changed 7 to 8 different Go moves, but they were all destroyed by Yunyang without exception. The white pieces lost every single one of them, unable to turn the tables. If that's the case, the white pieces are hopeless, Sirbai pondered. But why is it marked as the white pieces' victory? This is something I've been puzzled about. According to the book, the white piece should have played an exceptional move up to this point in the game and sealed the victory, then subdued the opponent and won. That's why it stopped here, Yin Yang said. The problem now is that I can't find that move. Sirbai nodded and said, that should be the case. I'd do the same if I were to make the Go manual, but where did the white piece's winning move end up? He stood up and looked down at the Go board for a long time, deep in thought and speechless for a long time. After a long time, he switched to another direction and looked at the Go board obliquely. He looked at it from a different angle, hoping to find more clues. The onlooker sees the game better than the onlooker. It was obvious that Sirbai was trying to pull his thoughts away from the Go board and look at the game from an outsider's point of view, but he gained nothing after a long time. Chapter 628. What did Tang Yishui say? Asked Sirbai. Tang Yishui racked his brains until he vomited blood from exhaustion, but he still couldn't figure it out. He's recuperating now, answered Yun Yang. Vomiting blood? Recuperating? If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, how would I have thought that there's such a game in this world? Is truly a blood-vomiting manual? Sirbai heaved a deep sigh. Suddenly, his eyes shone as he said, could this be the rumored blood-vomiting manual that no one has ever been able to solve? Yin Yang was stunned. Blood-vomiting manual? Then, the secret manual of Go? He nodded and said in deep thought, no wonder then. It's the legendary item in Go, nothing can be done about it. Sirbai pondered with rapt attention. After trying all the methods he knew, he swiftly came to a conclusion. This game of Go could not be solved with conventional methods. Thinking about it, he tried again and began to simulate various variations in his mind. The more he thought about it, the more variations there were, but the final result was still futile. It was difficult to change the losing game. As time went on, the black and white pieces on the Go board in his mind gradually turned into a confrontation between the black and white armies. Thousands of soldiers and horses were charging over and leaving in a cloud of dust. The two peerless marshals were unleashing all sorts of tricks and variations as they fought fiercely. Sirbai gradually appeared to be in a trance as he murmured, there's no way forward, no way back. What should I do in such a hopeless situation? How can I turn the losing game around and turn the tide? How absurd, how absurd. As he spoke, his face turned paler and paler while his body swayed like it was about to collapse. Sirbai's mind was completely immersed in the Go game now. His vision was filled with illusions and his expression grew more unsightly, but he did not seem to notice it at all. Yun Yang looked like he was deep in thought as well, as if his soul had left his body, but his mind was not on the game at all. There was only amusement in his heart. The god of wine, Feng Xiang'e, has studied this Go manual for most of his life, vomiting blood until most of his lifespan is gone. Even if you've held back, you're still one of the Four Seasons Tower's civil and martial ministers. You're still a distance away from the phantom physician, Feng Xiang'e, the expert of the generation above you, aren't you? Let's see if you'll die if you fall for it. Bang. The crown prince suddenly slammed his palm on the table, and there was a loud bang. Sirbai woke up at the sound and spat out a mouthful of blood, looking lethargic. He opened his eyes and said, that was close. Before his words echoed in the air, Yun Yang, who was standing beside him, moved with a gurgling sound. A mouthful of blood seemed to have rushed to his throat, but he shut his mouth forcefully and swallowed the blood back with a gulp. However, no one could see the redness on his handsome face, not to mention the shaking of his body and the way he wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his sleeve. It was obvious that he was in a similar state, no better than Sirbai. Yun Yang chuckled bitterly and said, how is this a Go playbook? It's a saber that kills. I've been laughing at the Go King for being a chess fanatic and lacking in composure. Now that I'm in the same situation, I can't believe it. Sirbai chuckled bitterly as well. The doubt that had just risen in the depth of his eyes disappeared. It looks like this playbook isn't something we can understand. Forcing it will only bring harm and no benefit. Yun Yang retrieved the playbook and smiled bitterly. I'd better take this back and shelve it. It turns out that all paths lead to the same destination. Once the mind is immersed in the art of Go and the martial arts, it's impossible to detach. It's an obsession. Once you sink into it, you'll be injured. It's better to avoid it. Sirbai heaved a long sigh and said, that's right. Young master is right. The ancients have poured their blood, sweat, and tears into creating this earth-shattering Go game. How can it be treated lightly? Despite his thoughts, He felt an inexplicable reluctance when he saw Yun-yang keeping the playbook in his embrace. "Young Master Yun, are you really not going to study it anymore? Are you going to stop now?" Yun-yang chuckled and said self-deprecatingly, "Sir Bai is a wise man. How can you not understand the reason behind this? This Go game can never be played again. If we force it, it'll only be disadvantageous to both of us. Forgive me for being frank, but I'm not a selfless friend to His Highness the Crown Prince, and we've never been on the same side in politics. Our standpoints are different, so naturally we can only bear our own fate. Of course, I can't bear for anything to happen to me. However, if something were to happen to Sir Bai because of this Go playbook, His Highness the Crown Prince's wrath will inevitably involve me. This isn't a good thing for both of us. It's better to avoid this layer of karma." Yun-yang chuckled. The Crown Prince, who was initially solemn, broke into a smile and said, "Crown Prince Yun's words are reasonable. The art of the game is intricate, but it's still a minor art after all. It's not a good thing to waste it. It's for the best that nothing serious has happened to everyone now." Sir Bai grinned and said without any ill will, "Young Master Yun is right. Let's forget about this then. I hope I'll still have the chance to learn from the Crown Prince in the future." He thought to himself, "I've memorized the key move of the first game anyway. I'll study it slowly when I get back. If I can break the game, it'll be my own secret. It's better than sharing it with others. I should be the only one left in the history of Go." Yun-yang kept the Go playbook away and bade farewell before leaving. His footsteps were light, as if he had let go of a heavy burden. Sir Bai watched him leave the residence, his eyes gleaming as he said, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, today is the best time to kill Yun-yang." The Crown Prince turned abruptly to look at Sir Bai in bewilderment. It was obvious that His Highness did not understand where Sir Bai's sudden suggestion had come from. Sir Bai sucked in a deep breath and said, "Times have changed. Your Highness has coincidentally established a friendly relationship with Yun-yang by chance. If you strike him now, Your Highness will have an excuse to get rid of suspicion even if someone suspects it later. Furthermore, the assassins are resting now, but it's also a time of chaos. It's extremely convenient to strike now." His Highness nodded slightly and said, "That's right. This is indeed the best time for us to strike. No one will suspect a friend who has just expressed goodwill and goodwill. Sir Bai is wise indeed." Sir Bai nodded with a smile and said leisurely, "It should be heaven's will that Your Highness will succeed. It would be absurd not to take what heaven has given you." Without further ado, His Highness passed down the order at once. Just as the order was about to be delivered, Sir Bai added, "Remember to bring back the Go playbook from young Master Yun. Do not damage it." The Crown Prince was dumbfounded. "Why the F***ck did you kill Yun-yang? Was it for yourself or for yourself? It was only a Go playbook. Was there a need to do it so blatantly, abusing one's authority for personal gain?" His Highness could not understand Sir Bai's mentality at all. Yun-yang walked out of the Crown Prince's residence. Just as he turned a corner, he saw a familiar face. Chapter 629. Shengguan Lingxiu was dressed in martial attire as usual, a pure white cloak draped over her tall, slender frame. Accompanied by a few guards, she stood boldly in the middle of the street, her beautiful eyes watching Yun-yang who was turning over. Her expression was calm, as if she had expected it and was waiting quietly. "Oh, Sister Lingxiu." Yun-yang was pleasantly surprised. "It's a small world indeed. We meet again." Shengguan Lingxiu smiled faintly and said, "There's no surprise here. I've been waiting here for you, Crown Prince Yun." The corners of Yun-yang's lips twitched subconsciously as he said faintly, "May I ask what instructions Sister Lingxiu has for me? Just say it to my face. Yun-yang will always be Yun-yang. How can I have so many other identities?" Shengguan Lingxiu, who already knew his true identity, could not help but feel like laughing when she saw the resentful look on the young man's face, and yet he still wanted to reply to her with a double meaning. "I dare not say that I have any instructions. I really only want to speak to you and ask you a few things." "Sister Lingxiu, please speak. This young brother will tell you everything he knows." Shengguan Lingxiu turned and walked away. "Walk with me. We'll talk as we walk." Yun-yang followed her with a pounding heart. What does this madam want with me? Why did he take it so seriously? Yun-yang was not an idiot. At most, his EQ was a little low at times. In the past, he had shouldered the deep grudge of the 9 Supremes. Even if he had realized it, as long as he cast it all aside, how could he be completely unmoved when he had nothing to do and the thoughts of a beautiful woman were deep in love? Both Ji Lingxi and Shengguan Lingxiu felt the same way. Yun Yang was not a fool, how could he not feel it? It was just that Yun Yang had mixed feelings about Shangguan Lingxiu. This woman was strong, brave, determined, and resilient. She did not lack any of the qualities that most men in this world did not possess. In addition, she was beautiful, intelligent, and virtuous. She was willing to work without complaint, willing to contribute, and dared to sacrifice. She had always known what she needed and what she desired. Yet, under the heavy responsibility that she had given herself, she would rather give it up and not fight for it. Because she knew that with the current situation of the Shangguan family, she didn't have the qualifications to pursue the so-called happiness. Her own happiness, whether it was for herself or for the person she loved, was just a heavy burden. Therefore she chose to endure it. Shangguan Lingxiu had been taking a step back in the face of her rival in love. Step by step, she had backed away from the great love that she could have used as an opportunity to develop, even when she had many convenient conditions, many connections, and elders who were happy to see her. Furthermore, Yun Yang had other feelings towards Shangguan Lingxiu as well, such as pity, respect, and cherishing. She was such a beautiful woman, but because of others and herself, she was shackled with so many heavy shackles. How unfortunate. Sister Lan, you still haven't found it? Shangguan Lingxiu asked softly as she walked slowly. No. Yun Yang heaved a long sigh. No news is good news. Shangguan Lingxiu fell silent before she could finish her sentence. Shangguan Lingxiu had mixed feelings about Yu Rulan as well. On one hand, the intelligent Yu Rulan was the best choice to be a best friend, be it in terms of knowledge, conversation, or any other aspect. On the other hand, Yu Rulan was unscrupulous in matchmaking for Ji Lingxi and had forced Shangguan Lingxiu to concede step by step in all aspects. Shangguan Lingxiu felt uncomfortable. It was one thing to concede willingly, but no one would feel comfortable being forced to do so. If one did not feel anything, one would either not feel anything for the person involved or one would be a fool. Shangguan Lingxiu was not a fool, she would not be oblivious to Yun Yang. Of course, she would feel uncomfortable about Yu Rulan's actions. In spite of this, it was understandable that Yu Rulan was planning for Ji Lingxi. There was nothing that could be done about the difference between closeness and distance. Both parties had different standpoints and it was difficult to reconcile, but the three girls had fought the enemy side by side during the battle at the Fortress of Resilience. The friendship that was built on the battlefield was the strongest. It was normal for them to appreciate each other and feel pity for each other. Therefore, it was inevitable that they would fight and scheme against each other at certain times, but most of the time, especially when Yun Yang was not around, they were still unusually harmonious, like sisters. At the end of the day, Yu Rulan was Ji Lingxi's sister-in-law to be. Well, she was already Ji Lingxi's official sister-in-law. If she did not plan for her own sister-in-law, was she supposed to fight for Shangguan Lingxiu? That would be absurd. If he still insisted on being jealous over this, it would be inconsiderate of him to get tangled up in this matter. Now that Yu Rulan had suddenly disappeared, Shangguan Lingxiu's first feeling was not relief but deep sorrow and pain. At once, Shangguan Lingxiu had mobilized all the resources she had at hand to search for her best friend. The search had yet to end and was still ongoing. Shangguan Lingxiu could not help but feel a pang in her heart when she heard that Yun Yang had not found him yet. Sister Lan is such a good person, how could she, sigh? Shangguan Lingxiu sighed and said, I wonder when this chaotic world will truly end. Yun Yang was silent for a moment before he said, It's about to end. Soon. His voice was filled with a longing for life after the war. How are my little nephews doing in your residence? Shangguan Lingxiu changed the topic immediately. Not bad at all. Yun Yang was not stingy with his compliments. Putting aside the fact that these fellows have extraordinary aptitudes, they all have a determined heart. This is exceptionally commendable, not to mention the militaristic demeanor that has been ingrained into their bones. It is constantly on display. So, instead of saying that they're here to study in the residence of Yun, it's more like they're doing my father a great favor. When Bao at his young age sees a group of children who are not much older than him and are so outstanding, he'll naturally want to emulate them and chase after them. This is very beneficial to Bao growth. Yun Yang looked at Shangguan Lingxiu and said, I'm not exaggerating. Your 6 nephews, be it mystical skill cultivation or the progress of their knowledge, have improved tremendously. Their learning attitudes are upright as well. The teachers who teach them are all full of praises for these 7 children. They're exceptionally worry-free. The word worry-freeing was a great compliment to the children. Shangguan Lingxiu smiled from the bottom of her heart and said in relief, That's great. I only hope that they won't tarnish the Shangguan family of generals' reputation when they grow up. Yun Yang said seriously, I can answer this question in advance now. They'll definitely push the Shangguan family of generals' reputation to another level. I'm very certain that these children can surpass your Shangguan family of generals' ancestors. They can do it. Shangguan Lingxiu nodded, her face flushed with excitement. There was no doubt in her mind because Yun Yang was still Supreme Cloud, the Nine Supremes think tank. His words would not be an exaggeration, nor would he speak without thinking. There must be a reason behind what he said. Chapter 630. Thank me? Yun Yang asked with a frown. Why? I know what you're thinking. Shangguan Lingxiu said, everything you've done for the Shangguan family, I'm very clear about it. Including gifting cultivation methods at the beginning, to teaching them later, and now sending them to Bao Er's side, all of this is for the Shangguan family. Yun Yang chuckled. Sister Lingxiu, you're being too serious. Everything is due to fate. Why would I have so many thoughts? Especially now that the 6 children are here, they're basically a great help to me. How can it be that I'm the one who's helping them? This doesn't make sense. As he spoke, he was about to change the topic. Shangguan Lingxiu refused to budge and said seriously, I mean it when I say it's clear. Bao Er is His Majesty's favorite child. The Crown Prince is going against the grain now and has lost the people's trust. If Bao Er can grow up successfully and have some ability, some things are basically set in stone. When the time comes, my 6 children who have grown up with Bao Er will naturally be the ones he trusts and relies on the most. More accurately, they'll be the earliest batch of subordinates. If that's the case, it won't be easy even if the Shangguan family of generals wants to fall. Yun Yang kept quiet for a bit and said, there's nothing absolute in this world. If the outcome isn't as expected, or if something happens along the way, bringing the 6 children here now would be like tying the Shangguan family of generals to an irreversible war chariot. If there's really a 1 in a million chance, the Shangguan family of generals will face a situation even more severe than what it's facing now. Shangguan Lingxiu smiled. There are many things in life that one needs to choose and stand on one's side. It's impossible to get everything without giving anything. Up until now, we still have the upper hand in this gamble of life. Even if there's a mishap and the situation doesn't turn out as expected, the Shangguan family still has at least 6 pillars of support no matter how it develops. It won't be any worse than it is now. Yun Yang could only nod. This is the truth. Indeed. The 2 of them walked forward in silence. The guards behind them followed them from a distance. No one dared to disturb them. Actually, as long as they grow up quickly, you'll be able to let go of the Shangguan clan's matters as soon as possible. You'll be able to free yourself from the shackles you've been carrying for far too long. Yun Yang sighed softly. Responsibility has to be handed over when it's time. Every generation's responsibility will be passed on to the next generation. It's better for you to do this as soon as possible. There was no doubt that Yun Yang's words came from the bottom of his heart. He truly felt sorry for Shangguan Lingxiu, but it was only the literal meaning. There was no other meaning behind it. However, in Shangguan Lingxiu's ears, there was obviously another meaning to his words. Let go of everything related to the Shangguan clan as soon as possible? Undo the shackles I've put on myself? Hand over responsibility? Shifting the responsibility? The faster the better? Shangguan Lingxiu could not help but overthink. What did he mean? Does he think that I'm wasting my youth? Was that why they made such an arrangement? Help me solve my problems so that I no longer have any worries or burdens. Also, what did he mean when he said the faster the better? Could he not bear to see me waste my youth? Or, could he not wait any longer? The more Shangguan Lingxiu thought about it, the more her heart pounded. Her pretty face was already flushed red. As she pondered, even her neck and ears were flushed. Yun Yang's heart skipped a beat when he saw how the usually valiant, iron-blooded general had suddenly turned bashful right out of the mouth of his thoughts. I'm speaking from my heart, the truth. How did I hit on her again? How did I put this? Yun Yang thought back urgently. What he had said just now was the truth from the bottom of his heart. There did not seem to be any problem. Shangguan Lingxiu sighed in melancholy and said in a low voice, yes, this responsibility. I want to pass it on as soon as possible. Thinking of how her nephews were still a few years away from the age where they could reluctantly take over her responsibilities, she could not help but feel downcast once more. A few years? That was a few years. She was already 23 years old now. How old would she be in a few more years? How old would Yun Yang be now? How could his state of mind not change in these few years? How could Ji Lingxi allow these few years to pass by in vain? As long as she took a step forward in these few years, would it not be hopeless for her then? She could not possibly marry him and become his concubine in the future, could she? As she thought about it, Shangguan Lingxiu felt a wave of melancholy wash over her. When she snapped out of it, she realized that Yun Yang was looking at her in surprise. Shangguan Lingxiu could not help feeling exasperated. Not to mention that this fellow was insensitive, even if he could understand her daughter's thoughts. How could she take that step now? It might not be a bad thing if he could remain ignorant and insensitive forever. It would be best if he could be a little dumber in this aspect. That would be the best. In spite of it, Shangguan Lingxiu felt that her thoughts were just wishful thinking, presumptuous and delusional. This person's true identity was Supreme Cloud, the Nine Supremes think tank. Others might not be able to read the mood, but how could Supreme Cloud be completely clueless? Young brother Yun, if you're free, why don't you accompany me for a drink? Shangguan Lingxiu let go of all her worries and made her request, recovering her valiant demeanor in an instant. Since everything in the future could not be grasped, it was better to cherish what was in front of them and grasp the present. To create more time and conditions for the two of them to spend time together. When there was a will, there was hope. Even if they were to be disappointed in the end and be alone for the rest of their lives, it would be good to have a memorable memory in their lives. Sister Lingxiu's invitation is exactly what this young brother wishes for. Yun Yang heaved a sigh of relief and thought, speaking of drinking, no one is better at it than I am. As long as we don't talk about feelings, we can talk about anything. We can talk about anything in the martial world or the imperial court. Let's go, let's go. Nothing in the world is more boring than getting drunk. Shangguan Lingxiu sighed. Of course, of course. Yun Yang looked at Shangguan Lingxiu's expression and felt that this elder sister did not seem to be in a good mood. There must be something that she was too embarrassed to talk about and wanted to talk about it with the excuse of being drunk. Or perhaps she just wanted to vent the frustration in her heart. No matter which it was, Yun Yang felt that it was his duty to accompany her for this drink and that he should press forward. Chapter 631. Just any place will do. Shangguan Lingxiu looked at Yun Yang, who was leading the way with big strides. No, to Aroma Tavern. What? I like Aroma Tavern. There's a sky room there. Shangguan Lingxiu was speechless. Brother, can you stop acting like a popinjay in front of me? Aroma Tavern. It was the busiest time for business. There was a sea of people everywhere. It was like a market inside while there were still a lot of people queuing outside. A few waiters who were welcoming the guests saw two people walking over from afar. Their eyes shone at first, but when they looked over, they groaned inwardly. It was because the one in front was the young lady of the Shangguan family. This was nothing much, but the one behind, the other identity was extraordinary. Young Master Yun. King Xiaoyao's heir Yun Yang. In Tiantang City, there was hardly anyone who did not know of this young Master Yun's name and temper. From being the top popinjay in Tiantang City, the pinnacle of gluttony, to being an expert in cultivation who could do whatever he wanted. Which of the young masters of Tiantang City had not been bullied by young Master Yun before? Ravaged? As a veteran of the Aroma Tavern, she had seen this young Master Yun collect protection fees from the young masters of the Aroma Tavern a few times. Their faces had turned pale from the amount he had collected, but none of them had dared to say anything. I wonder if there are any vacancies at this time. Shangguan Lingxiu was not used to bullying others. Seeing the sea of people, she immediately remembered that there were no reservations. It's just a small matter. Leave it to this young brother. Before her words echoed in the air, Yun Yang had already charged over with his head held high. Since I've come here, it would be embarrassing if I didn't have a room. Aroma Tavern was the most famous restaurant in Tiantang City. It had always been known for its booming business, and it was normal for it to be overcrowded. Those who wanted to feast here would basically have to make a reservation in advance. However, with Yun Yang and Shangguan Lingxiu's status, they did not need to make a reservation. They would start eating whenever they arrived. What? Reservation? Why don't you try saying that to me? Have you thought about it or not? Shangguan Lingxiu might not do anything, but Yun Yang would definitely give her a tight slap. A popinjay should behave like a popinjay. If you dare to tell me that you're making a reservation, I'll tear down your lousy building in minutes. Is there still a place to eat in this shabby building of yours? Yun Yang asked with his nose in the air. If young Master Yun wants to eat, of course there will be a place to serve you, the waiter said hurriedly. Another waiter had already rushed in to inform the boss. It did not take long before a chubby middle-aged man came running out, his face drenched in sweat. Oh my young Master Yun, your presence brings light to our humble shop. Please come in. Is there another place? Yun Yang asked. Yes, yes, yes. I need a quiet place where no one can eavesdrop. Yes, yes, yes. The place has to be big enough. Young master, please go upstairs. How about hall number 1? The boss wiped his sweat. Yun Yang was furious. Are you looking down on me? Do you think I can't afford it? Why isn't it the number 1 heaven on the top floor? Then, the fat boss looked like he was in a dilemma. The third prince has decided, make him scram. Yun Yang's words were written all over the boss's face. The boss was sweating profusely. He was like a dying fish that had been lifted out of the water, his mouth opening and closing, not knowing what to say. God, that's the third prince. You're asking him to scram with just 3 simple words? Even if you dare to say so, I don't dare. The third prince's men are here? Yun Yang snorted, his tone filled with disdain. The fat boss of the redolent and was originally a steward of the fourth prince's maternal uncle. On the surface, it was said that he had left the residence of imperial uncle and was self-reliant, but in reality he was using this into amass wealth for the fourth prince. If it were not for the fourth prince's support, how could a servant like him become the head boss of a famous restaurant in Yutong's capital city? With this knowledge, Yun Yang would not be courteous with him. Although His Highness the third prince hasn't arrived yet, someone from the residence of third prince is already here. This lowly one is in a difficult position. The fat boss looked pale. Difficult, my asterisk SS. Move aside. Yun Yang pushed him away and strode into the inn. Shengguan Lingxiu quickly pulled him back. Young brother Yun, it's the same wherever we eat. There's no need to complicate matters. How can that be? Yun Yang was defiant. We're giving this in face by coming here. Other than the number 1 heaven, none of the other rooms are befitting of our identities. How can our identities be neglected? Shengguan Lingxiu wanted to say that the third prince's identity was not weaker than theirs, but she instinctively recalled that Yun Yang's identity, cultivation path, and hidden identity were not something the third prince could compare to. If Yun Yang were to give in just like that, she might not be happy about it. Of course, there was still a reason for this. As the saying went, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. No matter how valiant and heroic Shengguan Lingxiu was, she could not escape this unbreakable truth. A strand of thought strayed her train of thought. When she recalled that Yun Yang's identity was high and mighty, he was still a subject after all. No matter how incompetent the third prince was, he was still of royal blood after all. In spite of this momentary thought, Yun Yang had already barged into the building. A series of thumping footsteps could be heard, heading straight for the top floor. Shengguan Lingxiu frowned but did not say anything more, following him. She pondered further now. No matter how arrogant Yun Yang appeared, it was not his true nature after all. His true identity was Supreme Cloud. Why would the 9 Supremes think tank do such a ridiculous thing? There must be an ulterior motive. There was only one room on the top floor, overlooking Tiantang City. The room's door was shut tight, but faint chatter and laughter could be heard coming from within. Yun Yang strode over and kicked the door open without a word. The 3 of them were talking to each other when they suddenly heard a loud noise. They turned their heads in surprise at the same time. Yun Yang, who was dressed in purple, strode into the room and said with his nose in the air, "Scram, all of you inside. I want to drink and talk in this room today. I don't want anyone to disturb me." One of the brocade-robed men was enraged. He stood up abruptly and said angrily, "Yun Yang, what do you mean by this? This room is used by His Highness the Third Prince to entertain distinguished guests. How dare you be so presumptuous?" Although the person who spoke had a face full of anger, although his aura was overbearing and his words were cold, the moment he opened his mouth, he brought up the third prince. This already showed that this person was only putting on a brave front, but was actually weak inside. Yun Yang was unfazed as he said coldly, "Since it's the third prince who wants to entertain guests, then let the third prince talk to me himself. Who do you think you are to talk to me? I'll count to 3 now. If all of you still don't scram, I'll strip you all naked and throw you out. Do you think I dare to do so?" He raised 3 fingers and said, "1. The middle-aged man was so angry that he almost spat blood. His eyes were spitting fire, his hair and beard bristling. Yun Yang bent his second finger and said with a light smile, 2. The 3 of them gritted their teeth, panting heavily, but they did not move. Yun Yang bent his third finger slowly, a cold glint shooting from his eyes as he said coldly, "No need to recite." Chapter 632. Yun Yang's third finger was only curled halfway, but he scoffed coldly, Wouldn't it have been better if you had been so F***king obedient from the start? How old are you now? F***king playing with my bottom line. I want all of you to vanish in the time it takes for me to close my eyes. As he spoke, he had already closed his eyes. The trio gritted their teeth, but there was nothing they could do. They could only pretend to be angry as they flung their sleeves and walked out in a single file. When the third person walked to Yun-Yang had just opened his eyes. When their gazes met, Yun-Yang was enraged. What a bastard. I can actually see you when I open my eyes. It looks like you really don't take my words to heart. Then he sent another kick into the air. The person was struck without any room for resistance. With a cry, he was flung out of the door like a rocket, flying horizontally in the air. After crashing through the window on the opposite side, he flew another 300 feet before he crashed into a crow's nest on a tree, shattering it into pieces. Only then did he land on his butt in the nest, stuck by a tree branch. You? The other two men were enraged, but they only dared to utter the word you. They could not do anything else. Yun-Yang did not speak. He looked at them with a smile, as if waiting for them to continue, as if he wanted to find fault with them further. The two of them shuddered, and like stray dogs they rushed out of the door, looking like stray dogs in the vast expanse of the world. See that? It's not quiet now. Yun-Yang looked at Shangguan Lingxiu, who was dumbfounded. Shangguan Lingxiu's eyes were wide as saucers as she stared at Yun-Yang like she did not know him at all. What are you doing? Anyone who knew that Yun-Yang was Supreme Cloud would have reacted the same way when they saw the scene. The idol in their hearts, the lover of their dreams, their morals shattered and their worldview destroyed could not be described. Yun-Yang said matter-of-factly, "Of course it's to find a comfortable place for us to drink and talk." Shangguan Lingxiu was exasperated. You're still pretending. Do you really think I don't know what your secret is? Unfortunately, I happen to know your true identity. I want to see how long you can continue pretending and to what extent. I'm going to fight it out with you. She waved her hand, and the guards took the initiative to leave. In the blink of an eye, there were only two people left in the room. Just as Shangguan Lingxiu was about to speak, she heard the sound of footsteps coming from outside again. A fragrant aroma wafted into her nostrils. The dishes were already being served. She had no choice but to shut her mouth. Not long after, more than 10 dishes of delicacies were served. Yun-Yang stopped them. These are more or less enough. I don't fancy your wine. There's no need to embarrass yourself. I've brought my own exquisite brew. Shangguan Lingxiu continued to stare in bewilderment as she watched Yun-Yang stretch out his hand and a pot of wine appeared in it, as if he had created it out of thin air. Lady Lingxiu was shocked once more, focusing her attention on the ring on Yun-Yang's finger. Sister Lingxiu, the wine I'm treating you to today is no ordinary wine. Yun-Yang said like he was presenting a treasure. This is the wine personally brewed by the god of wine, Feng Xiang'e. There aren't many pots left in this world. Let's get drunk today. We won't go home until we're drunk. Shangguan Lingxiu's eyes gleamed as she said sweetly, very well. She did not stand on ceremony, grabbing 2 large bowls and breaking the clay seals with a loud smack, pouring 2 full bowls of wine. Yun-Yang's eyebrows twitched as he watched, stunned. It was the first time he had seen a woman drink so freely and so generously, especially when the person in question was a stunning beauty. It was a feast for the eyes and it was unprecedented. Once the wine was opened, the aroma of the wine rose into the air. The image of 2 phoenixes could be vaguely seen in the room, hovering in the air and not dissipating for a long time. What a great wine. It actually has such a mystical image accompanying it. Shangguan Lingxiu exclaimed in admiration. She picked up the bowl and smiled, lowering her voice as she spoke through telepathy. This is a toast to Lord Supreme Cloud. Thank you, Lord Supreme Cloud, for everything you've done for the Empire of Yutong all these years. She finished her words in one gulp. Yun-Yang was dumbstruck. He picked up the bowl of wine but it froze in front of his mouth. He was like a statue. How did she know? After a long time he forced a smile on his stiff face and said, Sister Lingxiu, what you're saying? Shangguan Lingxiu smiled and said, last time at the Lunar River? I was surprised to find out that you fell asleep. Yun-Yang was hit with a sudden realization and could not help chuckling dryly. I see. He thought about it and nodded, saying, I see. He lifted his head and finished the bowl of wine, shaking his head and chuckling. I thought that my identity would remain unnoticed. I didn't expect it to be a joke. Shangguan Lingxiu's expression turned serious as she said, in this lifetime, I will never speak of this matter. If I break this promise, the entire Shangguan family of generals will be in trouble. Yun Yang nodded when he heard this but did not stop him. Supreme Cloud's identity was too important. Even though Yun Yang trusted Shangguan Lingxiu, he could not stop this promise. Moreover, Shangguan Lingxiu's promise was directly related to the future of the Shangguan family of generals. Her sincerity was evident. Shangguan Lingxiu raised her second bowl of wine and said, "Now, young Master Yun, can young brother Yun explain today's actions? Even though I am well aware of the reason behind it, it still makes me quite depressed." Yun Yang laughed and said, "Sister Lingxiu, you think too highly of Yun Yang. Yun Yang is still Yun Yang most of the time. What happened today is really just a coincidence." He smiled and said, "The so-called coincidence, the two of us drinking together here is truly a coincidence. As for the third prince's trouble, it's what I've been waiting for." "I see. I went to the residence of Crown Prince earlier for another matter. Now it's because of what the third prince did some time ago. He forcefully recruited a few crippled generals from the military to build a hall of the handicapped in his residence. The external purpose is to show his benevolence of comforting the disabled soldiers and rescuing the families of those in distress. Objectively speaking, it's a good thing. Even if he has ulterior motives, I'll turn a blind eye as long as he's willing to fork out gold and silver to carry out these things. I won't force everyone to be truly benevolent and ask for nothing in return." However, after he built the Hall of the Handicapped and gained fame, he didn't fulfill any of his promises. He even used the name of the disabled soldiers to deceive the Board of War, trying to gain the favor and support of the military bosses with all sorts of flowery words. Shangguan Lingxiu asked in confusion, "Which one of the bosses is muddle-headed? He wants to use the name to gather his forces without doing anything. How can he hide it from them?" Yun Yang chuckled humorlessly. "The third prince isn't a fool either. He already has a countermeasure. In fact, he did fork out a lot of silver taels to carry out relief work, but the main reason why I say that he didn't fork out any silver taels is that before the relief work, he first sent men to rob the families of the disabled soldiers. Of course, the robbery was made up to look like it was done by gangsters. Then he sent men to deliver silver taels to the poor. Naturally, they would be grateful, even more grateful." Shangguan Lingxiu was so angry that she could barely breathe. Her eyes were wide open. "There's actually such a thing? I didn't expect the third prince to be so insane. There's really such a thing?" Yun Yang sighed as well. "A prince wants to build a memorial but is reluctant to spend money. Of course I can't stand it. If I can't stand it, I'll beat it up." Chapter 633. Isn't it disappointing for a prince of a nation to engage in such petty acts? I have two goals today. One is to walk around the crown prince's residence and do something. The other is to get rid of all of the third prince's lackeys. Yin Yang grinned. Snatching a room is just to discuss them first. This is just the beginning, just the beginning. The main course hasn't been served yet. Come, let's drink. Our priority now is to drink and talk. Everything else will come later. Shangguan Lingxiu smiled sweetly, thinking to herself, I was right. He really has an ulterior motive. How could the almighty Supreme Cloud fool around like this? It's only reasonable that there's a deeper meaning behind this. Picking up the bowl of wine, he took a big gulp and said softly, if possible, it would be best to beat this third prince to the point that he no longer has any intention of coveting the throne. Get rid of all the people that he relies on once and for all, and there will be no future troubles. Yin Yang chuckled dryly. Of course I want to do that once and for all without any future troubles. It's a pity that it can't be done. We don't only have this prince. We must beat him up this time, and we must beat him hard enough, but we must preserve a portion of his strength so that he can't stir up any more trouble, but he still hasn't given up on his evil intentions. I still want to keep him as a qualified whetstone. Wouldn't it be a waste of space to make use of him if we beat him to death? Including the crown prince and the fourth prince, as well as the few princes who have yet to grow up but are already ambitious. All of them are useful whetstones. If we don't make the best use of them, wouldn't we be letting them off too easily? The royal family provides them with luxurious clothes and luxurious food, with such great authority, but they don't even get anything in return. Aren't they not human beings? Shangguan Lingxiu could not help but burst out laughing. Yun Yang's words sounded ludicrous, but there was a deeper meaning in them. Shangguan Lingxiu could hear it clearly. It was not supposed to be funny, but when Yun Yang spoke, he winked at her, intentionally or unintentionally. It was so funny that she could not help but break into a smile. Actually, I have another matter to discuss with you today. Shangguan Lingxiu's gaze fell on Yun Yang's face. She wanted to say something but hesitated. The emotion that flashed across her eyes was forcefully suppressed. Speak your mind. Hemming and hawing isn't your style, Sister Lingxiu, said Yun Yang. Old Great Mistress. There was sorrow in Shangguan Lingxiu's eyes. Old Great Mistress has been mentally and physically supporting the family of generals all these years. She's at the end of her life now. I don't want her to pass away just like this, but I can't find a way to prolong her life. Yun Yang was silent for a moment. His lifespan was nearing its end. This was a person's destiny, a destiny that was difficult to change. Even someone as strong as Feng Xiang'e, who had friends like Yun Yang, Supreme Cloud, Duguqiu, Ling Xiaozui and Heaven's Inquisition, it was difficult for him to come up with a solution to such a situation where his time was almost up. What good idea could Shangguan Lingxiu have? Defying the heavens and changing one's fate was never an easy task. Shangguan Lingxiu's heart sank when she saw Yun Yang's silence. Her eyes were rimmed with tears as she spoke in a trembling voice, I know. I know that old Grand Commandant Feng has already exhausted his lifespan. His condition is even worse than old mistress's. It was you who kept him alive, so I want to, please help. Her eyes were focused on Yun Yang's face, almost pleading. Yun Yang thought about it and explained softly, Sister Lingxiu, it's not that I'm trying to shirk this responsibility. It's because old mistress, old Grand Commandant Feng, and old Marshal Qiu are in different states. The two old generals are in a precarious state, mainly because they've expended a large amount of qi and blood in the battlefield in the past. Now that both of their qi and blood are depleted, it's difficult for them to continue. As for my cultivation method, it's best to regenerate qi and blood. I've filled the two old sirs' bodies with my basic qi to avert the crisis. Most importantly, the two old sirs aren't really at the end of their lifespan. That's why I've been able to extend their lives for a period of time. It doesn't mean that I can reverse the flow of life and death and extend their lifespan. However, the matriarch's condition is not like this. From what I know, although the matriarch is skilled in martial arts, she rarely goes to war, and her body does not have many injuries. However, over the years, the grievous news of her parents, husband, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, people dying on the battlefield continuously spread, causing the matriarch to suffer too many mental blows. Ordinary people who are injured only expend their qi and blood, but for the matriarch she expends her heart and blood. Old mistress's heart and soul have really been drained. Yun Yang sighed and said, in fact, I've checked on old mistress's physical condition many times when I went to the residence of Shangguan previously. However, since Sister Lingxiu has spoken this time, I'll go again no matter what and try my best. I dare not guarantee whether it'll be effective or how effective it will be. Shangguan Lingxiu was delighted. As long as you're willing to go, everything will be fine. Both of them had settled the matter. Shangguan Lingxiu was overjoyed and began to urge Yun Yang to drink. It was as if in her heart, there was nothing that could not be done as long as Yun Yang went. Supreme Cloud, the Nine Supremes think tank, was already a god in the hearts of Yutong's people. He was omnipotent and Shangguan Lingxiu knew too well how capable Yun Yang was. Naturally she had high hopes. Yun Yang chuckled bitterly. If he could reconnect with Emmy now, old mistress's matter would not be a big deal. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he could settle it with a wave of his hand. The problem now, however, was that he had yet to recover. If he were to rely on the endless divine art to comb through the meridians, it would only be like what Yun Yang had said just now. At most he could only delay it for a period of time. When the endless spiritual qi that had been infused into her body was exhausted, it would be the end of it. Furthermore, although such a method could be used repeatedly, the effect would be worse each time and the duration would be shorter. Yun Yang could not stay in the residence of Shangguan all the time. This was the crux of the matter. At this moment, footsteps could be heard coming from outside. Someone was walking up the stairs, walking towards them unhurriedly. From the sound of the footsteps, there were only 3 people. Yun Yang glanced at Shangguan Lingxiu. Both of them did not speak and waited quietly for the arrival of the person. Dong dong dong, someone knocked on the door. A voice that was as gentle as the spring breeze, tinged with a hint of laughter, rang from outside. Is it young Master Yun inside? This humble king has come to meet you. It was the third prince. A cold smirk hung on the corners of Yun Yang's lips as he spoke lazily. Third prince is here. Do you want me to get out of here? If you have the intention, why don't you come in and give it a try? The carefree laughter outside did not stop as the door opened. The third prince walked in leisurely and said with a hearty laugh, how would this humble king dare to let brother Yun out of here? It's just that we haven't seen each other for a long time, so I've come to have a drink with brother Yun. What do you think? The third prince thought that he was already very approachable and courteous. He even believed that even if Yun Yang did not have a good impression of him, it was still possible for him to sit down and have a chat or have a glass of wine since he had said so. One should not slap a smiling person. This was how it had always been since ancient times. As long as he was allowed to sit down, it would not be difficult for him to get closer to Yun Yang and even establish a relationship. All he needed was a starting point. As long as he could achieve this goal, what was the big deal if a few of his subordinates were humiliated? Even if Yun Yang killed a few of them, it would not be a big deal. This was a relationship with the carefree king, who was extremely popular at the moment. Actually, Shangguan Lingxiu's request was not about this, but I went to the toilet and couldn't remember what I wanted to write when I came back. The speechlessness was depressing. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.